Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Man in Marvel, Thank You Supreme Doomsday. Chapter 61. When Suyi and Hila left from the Monaco Racing Club, Yuki Asuna came to the basement of her villa. Opened the safe in the corner. This is Yuki Asuna, the gold that was specially converted based on the world of One Piece where Whitebeard is. The gold in front of him is worth million in total. Although it is said that there are only people with waste abilities, there are no waste fruits. But Yuki Asuna still intends to have a more developmental fruit. In the chat group, Yuki Asuna found Whitebeard alone. Yuki Asuna. Old man with white beard, the gold here is ready. Whitebeard. Gu la 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 la, my sons have also found 4 fruits. Let's see which fruit you want. Saying that, Whitebeard sent 4 pictures to Yuki Asuna, and introduced them to Yuki Asuna respectively. According to our Devil Fruit Atlas here, these 4 fruits are animal-type fish fruit electric eel form, Superman-type speed fruit, animal-type dog fruit pug form, nature-type muddy water fruit. Which one do you want to choose? Whitebeard said to Yuki Asuna. Yuki Asuna fell into deep thought at this time. As a girl, she would never choose the electric eel or pug form. And that muddy fruit, although it is a natural fruit, but if Asuna Yuki develops it by herself, she has no idea what the direction of development is. On the contrary, when Whitebeard said the speed fruit, a bright color flashed in Yuki Asuna's eyes. Complete this task first, and you will get the cultivation base of the great swordsman. Although I don't know how strong this great swordsman is, at least he won't be weaker than the great swordsman in the world of One Piece. Then if you pair it with the speed fruit, your combat power can definitely increase a lot. When the time comes, accumulate points and cancel the side effects of the devil fruit. You can also continue to eat other devil fruits. Taking advantage of this time, Whitebeard can also look for better devil fruits. At least better than these animal and natural systems. Thinking of this, Yuki Asuna immediately said to Whitebeard, Master Whitebeard, I have decided, I choose the Superman speed fruit. After hearing this sentence, Whitebeard also felt that the Superman-type speed fruit is more suitable for the current Yuki Asuna. My son found this fruit, but I can charge you a friendly price, as long as million. The million here is gold worth. Immediately, Whitebeard sent a red envelope to Yuki Asuna. While accepting the red envelope, Yuki Asuna also sent million worth of gold to Whitebeard. After completing this transaction, Yuki Asuna then said to Whitebeard, Master Whitebeard, I will withdraw first. If there are good fruits, remember to keep them for me, I will buy them again. Don't worry, for the extra fruit, the members of the group are given priority, Guo. Immediately, Yuki Asuna took out the superhuman-type speed fruit that Whitebeard gave her in the basement. Without any hesitation, Yuki Asuna ate the speed fruit. However, the indescribable taste of wanting to be immortal broke out in Yuki Asuna's mouth instantly. My God, is this the smell of a devil fruit? As Yuki Asuna's voice fell, she rushed directly towards the living room. After this period of training, her physical skills have been considered a thorough introduction. But at this time, Yuki Asuna, who ate the speed fruit, suddenly doubled her speed the moment she took the first step. Originally, it took nearly 40 seconds to walk normally to reach the living room from the basement. But this time, Yuki Asuna only took 5 seconds. Came to the living room. Even the actions of pouring water and drinking water are like pressing the accelerator button. With cool water pouring into the mouth. After dispelling the indescribable smell of the devil fruit, Asuna Yuki carefully felt the changes in her body. She has an intuition, as long as she keeps developing this fruit. At that time, not only will he be able to speed up his body, but he will also be able to speed up his nerve response. This is undoubtedly a fruit that is very suitable for fighting. There is nothing wrong with my own choice. Thinking of this, Yuki Asuna only felt that she would definitely become stronger at a faster speed. I won't be the weakest existence in the group soon. Yuki Asuna only felt that she was completely ignited. At this time, Suyi also took care of his own affairs. In the group, the 2 people who participated in the task this time. Suyi, I'm all ready here, are you both ready? CC, I've been very free here, and I can leave at any time. Yuki Asuna, I'm ready here too, you can come here. Suyi, in that case, let's go. After finishing speaking, Suyi and Cece set up a tunnel and came to Yuki Asuna's world. As the passage appears in the room, Yuki Asuna only felt her heart beating faster and faster. Anticipation and tension are entangled at this time. Instead of going to other people's world before, Yuki Asuna said that she was not nervous at all. But now, Suyi has come to his own world. And it's my own home. This made Yuki Asuna a little bit unable to control her emotions. At this time, the footsteps of Suyi and Cece echoed in Yuki Asuna's ears. Immediately afterwards, the two walked out of the passage. The moment he just walked out, Suyi noticed that Yuki Asuna's aura was slightly different from the last time they met. I only heard Suyi say to Yuki Asuna, "You seem to have become stronger." After hearing Suyi's praise, the corners of Yuki Asuna's mouth rose, revealing a very nice smile. "Hey, I just ate the superhuman type speed fruit, and my speed has improved a lot." Suyi nodded slightly. "This is indeed a very suitable fruit for you. If you can accelerate your nerve reaction speed and body reaction speed at the same time in the future, your combat effectiveness will definitely have a qualitative leap." "Double acceleration, I know, I will definitely work harder." Cece looked at Yuki Asuna in front of her, and said, "Asuna, as expected, you have become very ladylike in front of Suyi." Yuki Asuna blushed and complained, "You witch, I've always been a lady, okay." Suyi didn't pay attention to the words of the two girlfriends, and immediately said, "When is the official opening time of SAO?" "It's 8 o'clock this morning, and it's 7:15. Yuki Asuna glanced at the clock in the middle of the living room, and said to Suyi, "Yeah, then there's plenty of time." "Suyi, what preparations are you going to make?" Yuki Asuna asked Suyi. Suyi waved his hand casually, and said, "Actually, it's not a preparation, it's just a preparation to kill someone." "Kill someone? This person's name is Nobuyuki Sugo. If I remember correctly, he should be working in your father's company." Suyi's voice fell into Yuki Asuna's ears. Yuki Asuna nodded, and immediately said, "Then I will show you the way." Yuki Asuna trusted Suyi very much. She didn't ask too much at all. Not even suspicious. So he naturally took Suyi's hand and walked towards his father's company. But I didn't want Suyi to say at this time, it would be too slow to walk directly like this. After that, Suyi said to Cece, "Cece, wait here for a while, Yuki Asuna and I will come as soon as we go." As Suyi's words fell, Suyi hugged Yuki Asuna into his arms. The phantom fruit activates. Suyi seemed to be invisible, completely integrated with the surrounding environment. It's hard to find anything at all. "Asuna Yuki, please point me in the direction, we will go back quickly." Yuki Asuna, who was hugged in Suyi's arms, had a delicate and pretty face at this time, which could be said to be very rosy. I only heard Yuki Asuna say to Suyi at this moment, "Suyi, just call me Asuna." Afterwards, Yuki Asuna pointed Suyi in a direction. Looking at the extremely shy Yuki Asuna in his arms, the corners of Suyi's mouth slightly raised. The speed has increased several times sharply. In the blink of an eye, Suyi arrived outside Nobuyuki Sugo's office. Phantom fruit activates again, but this time the phantom is set on the camera. It made the entire corridor and the office appear very quiet, without the slightest weirdness. Even if Asuna's figure is fully revealed, there is no way to record it. But Suyi still concealed his figure. At this moment, Yuki Asuna knocked on the door and walked directly to Nobuyuki Sugo's office. When Nobuyuki Sugo saw Yuki Asuna walking in from the outside, his expression shook violently. Immediately afterwards, a look of surprise appeared on his face. "Asuna, why are you here? Did you come here specially to see me?" Yuki Asuna was so expressionless, looking at Nobuyuki Sugo in front of her. Nobuyuki Sugo looked a little apprehensive. "Why, what? Is there a flower on my face?" Nobuyuki Sugo seems to be very concerned about himself, whether he can leave a good impression on Yuki Asuna. So he immediately looked at the mirror next to him. And it doesn't matter if you don't look at it, it's shocking to see it. He only saw a man behind him. Immediately, Nobuyuki Sugo looked back abruptly. But in the eyes, there is only Asuna Yuki alone. As if aware of his gaffe, Nobuyuki Sugo hurriedly took a deep breath. "Tomorrow. Did I ask you to call me that? Besides, starting today, I don't want to see you again. In every sense." Nobuyuki Sugo looked a little embarrassed. Is there something wrong with me? Why do you say that? And what do you mean by this sentence? The more Nobuyuki Sugo spoke to the end, the lower his tone became. I saw bursts of dark light flashing in his eyes. At this moment, a pair of fists were slowly clenched. Because your stinky face is really disgusting. As long as you exist in this world, you will destroy this world. Yuki Asuna's mouth can be said to be merciless. The words were more like a sharp arrow, piercing Nobuyuki Sugo's heart. Nobuyuki Sugo's mind is narrow. As a classmate of Kayaba Akihiko, he often fell into the mood of envy, jealousy and hatred. Over time, this emotion completely twisted his mind. In other words, it is not a problem at all to say that he is a monster in human skin. Following Yuki Asuna's words, he continued to cut off his human skin, and he was finally about to expose his monster-like essence. I saw Shushong Shinji gritted his teeth, his gaze was like a beast. Since you hate me so much, then I will let you know what will happen if you offend me. Asuna Yuki, I have wanted you for a long time. As long as I get you, I can occupy your father's property and become a more powerful person than Akihiko Kayaba. Ha 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 ha. Saying that, Nobuyuki Sugo rushed towards Yuki Asuna. However, at this moment, Suyi withdrew the phantom. Where is the figure of Yuki Asuna in the eyes? Only Suyi stood in Asuna's position, showing a faint smile to Sugo Nobuyuki in front of him. It turned out that long before entering the door, Suyi used the ability of the phantom fruit to change the identities of Suyi and Yuki Asuna. From the beginning to the end, Nobuyuki Shushong was talking to Suyi. I only heard Suyi jokingly say at this moment, I'm just asking you if you were surprised or not. I'm just asking if you're surprised or not, or not. Suyi's voice resounded in the ears of Nobuyuki Shushong. Nobuyuki Sugo's pupils suddenly shrank. Subconsciously took a step back, his body slumped directly on the table, only using his arms to support his body. You, who are you? You don't care who I am, I just want to ask, how do you want to die? The corners of Suyi's mouth turned up, and he grinned a very wicked smile. And Yuki Asuna also said beside him, now I know why Suyi wants to kill you, even if he doesn't want to kill you, I want to kill you too. Yuki Asuna's body exuded bursts of cold breath. Yuki Asuna has experienced battles. More or less, there is a little murderous look on his body. Aware of the determination of Suyi and Yuki Asuna, Nobuyuki Sugo's heart kept sinking. At this moment, Nobuyuki Sugo's face was twisted to the extreme. He stared at the two people in front of him with extremely resentful eyes. You forced me to do this. If you want me to die, I think you should die first. Saying that, Nobuyuki Sugo pulled out a pistol directly from under the table, pointed at Suyi in front of him without hesitation, and pulled the trigger fiercely. Tongues of fire spit. The bullet burst out. Go straight to Suyi's face. Bang! The bullet hit Suyi's face. But the scene in front of him was different from what Nobuyuki Sugo had imagined. In his imagination, Suyi's face should look like a blossoming flower. But now, the bullet was imprinted on Suyi's face, nothing happened, instead it was directly thrown aside. It's like dreaming. How is it possible? This is absolutely impossible. Nobuyuki Sugo stared at the scene in front of him in disbelief, his eyes widened, and he didn't come back to his senses for a long time. Regarding this, Suyi lowered his head and glanced at the bullet lying at his feet, then turned his head to look at Nobuyuki Sugo in front of him. Nobuyuki Sugo, do you know? Anyone who shoots at me has never survived, and you are no exception. No, this is absolutely not true. In this world, how can someone survive being shot? I must be dreaming. I must be dreaming. After finishing speaking, Nobuyuki Sugo ran out directly. Seeing this, Yuki Asuna said to Suyi, Suyi, we now. Before Yuki Asuna finished speaking, Suyi said lightly, you must know that there are many accidents in this world, such as falling down the stairs when going down the stairs. Nobuyuki Sugo ran to the corridor, and the empty corridor made Nobuyuki Sugo's heart calm down a little. But at this moment, his foot seemed to be tripped by something. The whole person suddenly lost his balance and fell down the stairs. Puff, 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 the whole person is like a ball, rolling directly down the stairs. In a short period of time, many bruises appeared on the body. The pain made Nobuyuki Sugo gasp. Why am I so unlucky today? Nobuyuki Shushong cursed secretly, but fear still drove his body. Let him run towards the outside. Now, as long as they don't get caught up by Suyi and the others. Just when Nobuyuki Sugo was thinking of this, Suyi said to Yuki Asuna again. In other words, while walking on the street, there was a big explosion of groundwater. Just as Suyi finished speaking, Nobuyuki Shushong finally walked out of the building. He ran quickly on the street, preparing to stay away from the building. But at this moment, cracks suddenly appeared on the ground under his feet. The cracked lines are like spider webs, constantly spreading towards the surroundings. Before Nobuyuki Sugo could react, what happened? I saw the cracked ground, which exploded suddenly at this moment. Groundwater suddenly spewed out. It directly hit Nobuyuki Sugo's body. The powerful impact instantly covered Nobuyuki Sugo's body. It was as if Nobuyuki Sugo had been hit by someone heavily on his body. Fell directly to the side. Coupled with the bruises that appeared on his body before, Nobuyuki Sugo couldn't help taking a breath. Why is the whole world targeting me? And at this time, Suyi came in front of Yuki Asuna, and said, or maybe he was broken by a flower pot falling from the sky. It seems to be to verify Suyi's words. When Nobuyuki Sugo was about to grit his teeth and continue running forward, a flower pot fell from the sky. Clap. The flower pot landed on Nobuyuki Sugo's right knee. The entire right leg showed a strange bend. Don't think too much, this right leg must be useless. And this sudden scene is even more frightening. There were screams in the street. Why am I so unlucky? Nobuyuki Sugo let out a roar. As Nobuyuki Sugo's voice fell, he still clenched his teeth, got up abruptly from the ground, and walked forward with all his strength. Resisting the rising pain, he kept jumping with his left leg. He wants to jump towards the small garden next to him. As long as you go there, there should be absolutely no accidents. And just when he thought so, Suyi in the office said, it's also possible that he was hit by a car, and the pistol hidden on his body went off. After castrating this guy, he was crushed to death by a meteorite falling from the sky, maybe. Following Suyi's voice fell. Yuki Asuna only heard a piercing sound from outside. Immediately afterwards, there was a gunshot and an unparalleled scream. This is not over yet. A small meteorite fell from the sky and hit Nobuyuki Sugo directly smashed Nobuyuki Sushong into a meat paste. At the same time, a pothole with a diameter of 10 meters was left behind. At this time, Yuki Asuna came to the floor-to-ceiling windows. Looking down at the scene in front of him, he subconsciously asked, how did you do it? Looking at the astonished Yuki Asuna in front of him, Suyi just said lightly, it's just a kind of ability, a top-notch magnetic field, which can be extended to the atomic level. Within this range, the electromagnetic force has become chemical bonds, allowing me to manipulate chemical structures and modify matter. After finishing speaking, Suyi directly picked up Yuki Asuna and walked towards the villa where she was. Soon, they came to Yuki Asuna's villa. After Suyi and CC took out the mission props, the fully submerged helmet, from the chat group, Suyi asked Yuki Asuna and CC, are you ready? Yuki Asuna and CC looked at each other, nodded, and said, ready. In that case, let's connect to the game. As Suyi's voice fell, he put on the helmet, lay on the bed and said, start connecting. At this time, CC also took advantage of the situation and lay on Suyi's left-hand side, put on the helmet, imitated Suyi's appearance, and said, start connecting. Seeing that CC was lying on Suyi's left side consciously, Yuki Asuna could only blush in embarrassment, resisting the throbbing in her heart, came to Suyi's right, and then put on the helmet. Start connecting. After the three people started connecting, they entered the game. Start connecting. As Suyi and the three shouted together, it was time to start connecting. They only saw a large number of colorful cylinders flashing rapidly. Immediately after that is the words that various programs are loaded. OK. It is detected that a new player has logged in, please create a character profile. Suyi, CC, Asuna. As the three people called out the names of the characters and made adjustments in various aspects, they entered the real game world, Sword Art Online. Slowly opened his eyes, Suyi looked at his hands, slightly touched his body, feeling the difference in this world. But the touch feedback is basically the same as the real world. The only shortcoming is that most of his abilities seem to be useless at all. However, after Su Yi's finger slid down and called up his task panel, then I found that all my abilities are S. Strength, S. Agility, S. Physical strength, S. As long as it is a basic attribute, Su Yi is all S here. It can be said that the start is a full attribute state. This is definitely a bug-level existence in Novice Village. It can be imagined that Sao is various abilities, which are based on the physical body in the real world, so as to achieve a certain degree of bonus. It's just that this bonus, the highest should be S. But among novices, full attribute S is enough. At this time, 2 clusters of light appeared beside him. As the 2 groups of light dispersed, only the figures of CC and Yuki Asuna came into my eyes. No, not right. To be precise, Yuki Asuna should be called Asuna now. A little surprise appeared in CC's pupils. She looked around, except that the various attribute bars were not realistic. As far as the eye can see, it is basically the same as the real world. This feeling has to be said, it is really amazing. Is this the world in Sao? CC murmured softly. She looked around, only to see many light clusters appearing, and these were all new players. At this time, Asuna took a deep breath. The idea of becoming stronger had already been deeply rooted in her mind. Su Yi, what should we do now? The corner of Su Yi's mouth raised slightly. Now let's go to leveling immediately. While these guys are shocked there, we must seize this time and immediately monopolize the nearby wild area. The wild area is where monsters appear. After the words fell, Su Yi observed the surrounding buildings. According to the appearance of the building, Su Yi took the 2 girls and ran towards the outside of Novice City. At this moment, a voice floated to everyone's ears. Hey, that little brother over there, wait a minute. As soon as Su heard the voice, he followed the voice and looked into the distance. All I saw was a man with a downcast samurai face, very ordinary clothes, even a bit rustic, and a red turban with a pattern, waving at him constantly. Asuna and CC saw this man, and turned to look at Su Yi next to him. But I heard Su Yi say to the 2 women, don't worry about this guy, the most important thing now is to work hard to improve your skills and strength, and strive to become the most powerful existence in this world. This is your task, Asuna. Asuna nodded heavily, then froze for a moment, and asked Su Yi, hey, Su Yi, how do you know that my name in the game is Asuna? Because your name is next to the life bar. What, so it's here, let's go, Su Yi, let's go and become stronger. As Asuna's voice fell, her speed was a little faster. Obviously in the game of Sao, Asuna is also able to use the ability of the superhuman acceleration fruit. If you switch to the natural system, it is estimated that you can only avoid death when you die. As for the addition of the animal system, it is not as good as the speed fruit, this simple and intuitive acceleration. Watching Su Yi and the others leave quickly, Klein curled his lips. What, he just ran away. I wanted that guy to take us. Looking at how fast they run, they must be beta testers. Just as Klein was making complaints here, his gaze caught sight of another little brother. Like Su Yi, this little brother also ran towards the outside of the city quickly. Immediately, Klein waved to the little brother. Hey, little brother, wait a minute. This time, Klein took his own steps and rushed towards the little brother. The little brother heard Klein's words, and subconsciously stopped his footsteps. What's matter? Seeing how you run without hesitation, you are definitely a beta tester. The little brother was stunned for a moment, and subconsciously said, forget it, let's do it. Klein's eyes lit up when he heard this, and he said immediately, it's my first time playing today, can you teach me how to get started? Speaking of this, Klein put his hands together and said to the little brother in front of him, really, please. Oh fine, Yaxi, my name is Klein, please give me more advice in the future. I'm Kirito, let's go outside the city to practice our fighting ability. It is good. And when Klein and Kirito introduced each other there, Su Yi and the others have already arrived in the wild. The real death mode has not been activated yet, so you don't have to be afraid at all, crazy attacks are fine. Just like normal battles, there are infinite sword skills here. Apart from launching skills, ordinary attacks have no restrictions at all. And this is the unlimited sword system. Hearing Su Yi's words, Asuna nodded slightly. I saw that she slowly pulled out the thin sword at her waist, and rushed towards the wild boar that had been refreshed in front of her. CC didn't hesitate either. She wields a western sword, similar to the rapier used by Asuna. I saw two sword blades in the air, flashing bursts of cold light. During the flickering of light, the wild boar has not yet reacted. Their attack had already landed on the wild boar. Roar! Only the roar of the wild boar was heard. The blood bar above it gradually disappeared. Immediately afterwards, it turned into bloody fragments and dissipated into the air. At this time, Su Yi said to the two women, "Yes, that's it, now let's start earning experience like crazy." Asuna, "Yes, good. CC, this game feels really good. When I have time in the future, I will come and play with you often, Asuna." In this way, the three of them followed the path, crazily beheading wild monsters along the way. So much so that when Kirito brought Klein into the wild, he was completely stunned. Where are the wild monsters? Why are no wild monsters spawned? Kirito walked out of Novice City with Klein. He said to Klein next to him, "This is the wild area. Wild monsters are often refreshed. You can gain experience by defeating them. If you are lucky, you can also have special tasks, or title rewards, or rare props drop." Klein nodded thoughtfully. Then the wild monsters in the novice area should be easy to defeat. Shall we take advantage of this time to fight more wild monsters? Kirito showed a smile. I think so too. So where do we go to find wild monsters? As long as you keep walking, there will be wild monsters spawning nearby. Speaking of this, Kirito was stunned for a moment. He subconsciously looked back at Novice City. They are already far away from Novice City, but still did not refresh any wild monsters. It stands to reason that since the server has just started, there should still be wild monsters. What is happening? Is it a bug, or is it because of other reasons? For example, the wild monsters here have been wiped out. Do I need to wait until the wild monsters are reset before I can continue to earn experience? When this idea appeared in Kirito's mind, it can no longer be waved away. Klein, let's go ahead and have a look. If there are no accidents, the wild monsters here should have been wiped out. Klein repeated subconsciously, "It's gone. How is this possible? You know, this server has just started." Just when Klein thought of this, three figures suddenly appeared in his mind. These three figures are exactly Su Yi and the others. I only heard Klein say, "It can't be those three guys." Kirito frowned when he heard this. Which three guys? Kirito asked hastily. Klein scratched his head and said, "Before I saw you, I saw three people rushing out. It couldn't be them. Let's wipe out these wild monsters." Hearing Klein's words, Kirito secretly thought it was bad. An idea was born in his mind. If these guys monopolize these wild monsters from the beginning, then the speed at which they improve their level will be slower. One step at a time, one step at a time. A good level brushing area will always be occupied by them. You know, in the world of Sao, every level up, the increase is huge. If this snowballs, I'm afraid he will stand on top of everyone. This is very unacceptable to Kirito. Don't look at Kirito sometimes, he is more kind. But in terms of games, he is not convinced by anyone. Otherwise, he wouldn't have challenged the boss alone during the beta test. Not to mention that even after Sao has become a killing game, it still maintains the habit of being a lone ranger. After all, this is the pride in Kirito's heart. He plays games, or don't play, or become the strongest. Thinking of this, Kirito immediately ran towards other wild areas ahead. Although it took a detour, it was the place he discovered during the closed test. Thinking about it, the speed of leveling would not lag behind those guys too much. At that time, it will not be too passive. Klein saw Kirito running towards the front, and followed quickly. Together with Kirito, go to a relatively far wild area. However, what Kirito didn't know was, these three people are not ordinary people at all. The speed of leveling can't be compared with ordinary people at all. If it is said that Kirito's agility attribute, when entering the game, is far beyond ordinary people, then Su Yi has all attributes, far surpassing these ordinary players. In addition to Asuna's acceleration fruit, even at the beginning, it gave other players an extra ability. Calling them real cheaters is perfectly fine. Just ask Kirito how to compare with them. When Kirito went to another wild area to level up. Suyi and the other three have already met the strongest wild monster in this wild area. An elite wild monster named Wild Boar King. At this time, Suyi's level was 3, and Asuna and CC were 2. And the Wild Boar King on the opposite side is level 5. For a game like SAO where level is the priority, the pressure that the Wild Boar King put on the three of them was relatively high. Roar! The Wild Boar King in front of the three of them roared. The Wild Boar King with huge fangs stared at the three people in front of him with a pair of red beast eyes. A lot of saliva flowed out of his mouth, touching the grass. The body looks more muscular. Thinking about it as the Wild Boar King, it should have good strength. However, the three of them are all ruthless characters. Asuna and CC, who already had some experience, rushed towards the Wild Boar King in tacit understanding. They hold their weapons in both hands and place them at their sides. The light condenses above. This is the most basic skill in SAO games, slash. It can increase the power of slashing a little. With the activation of the skill light, the two women have been able to skillfully release the skills. The sword light flickered. The blade slashed across the Wild Boar King's body. Fragmented bloodstains appeared on the Wild Boar King. But the attack of two people couldn't cause too much damage to the Wild Boar King. On the contrary, it angered the Wild Boar King. All I heard was the roar of the Wild Boar King, and with his terrifying fangs, he rushed towards Asuna who was closest to him. Asuna's eyes sank. If he wants to be bumped by this guy, even if he doesn't die, there will be a bloody skin left. It will definitely affect the progress of the upgrade. Thinking of this, Asuna said without the slightest hesitation, "Speed up." In an instant, Asuna's body seemed to have broken through the restrictions of SAO. The speed of the whole person has increased a lot out of thin air. Kankan escaped the Wild Boar King's collision attack. However, after Asuna dodged the attack, the Wild Boar King didn't stop. Instead, he rushed towards Suyi. The weapon Suyi chose was the heavy sword. The requirements for strength are already very high. So in terms of attack power, it has good damage. Suyi Fei didn't dodge the Wild Boar King's attack. Instead, relying on his own ability, he swung his épée and smashed it at the Wild Boar King in front of him. Bang! A loud voice sounded. With the two as the center, a hurricane suddenly set off. The hurricane pressed down on the green grass and spread out in all directions. Blow Asuna and CC's hair up. Only Suyi's feet could be seen, deeply sunk in the ground. The blood bar didn't drop a single cent. On the contrary, it was the Wild Boar King's thick fangs that were chopped off by Suyi. It fell to the ground, turned into pieces, and disappeared in the eyes of everyone. And the Wild Boar King's blood bar dropped even more exaggeratedly, more than half of it was gone. It can be seen how exaggerated Suyi's full bonus is. Come on, let's deal with the elite monster in front of us. I think we will be the first to deal with the elite monster. Following Suyi's voice fell. The three of them rushed to the elite Wild Boar King in front of them at the same time. Xiao Xiao's killing spirit erupted at this time. The murderous spirit erupted at this time. Su stepped forward step by step. The épée drew an arc in the air. There were bursts of ear-piercing whistling sounds. He went straight to the head of the Wild Boar King. Asuna and CC took a deep breath at this time. They raised their swords at the same time. The blade of the sword shone with light, stabbing towards the Wild Boar King in front of him. Although they are mainly agile, their strength is not very strong. But the damage caused is definitely not bad. Roar! The Wild Boar King roared. Immediately afterwards, the sword blades of the two women easily pierced both sides of the Wild Boar King. Puff! As the blade sank into the Wild Boar King's body, the Wild Boar King's health bar dropped again. I saw that the blood bar had changed from green to red, almost bottoming out. And at this moment, Suyi directly came to make up the knife. The huge épée slammed on the Wild Boar King mercilessly. Directly split the Wild Boar King in half. As the Wild Boar King's body was split in half, it instantly turned into pieces and dissipated in front of everyone. Suyi has been promoted from level 3 to level 4. Asuna and CC have been upgraded from 2 to 3. Suyi scored the final blow and received a special reward, Wild Boar King gloves. Wild Boar King gloves. Strength bonus B+, the damage against wild boars will be increased. World announcement. Congratulations to player Suyi, who won the title of Elite Monster Killer by killing an elite monster for the first time. Elite Monster Killer. The damage done to elite monsters has been improved to varying degrees. Following the announcement of this world, after appearing in everyone's field of vision, they were all stunned. Especially when Kirito, who was leveling crazily, saw this scene, his face suddenly changed. As a result, he was directly knocked into the air by the wild boar in front of him. The blood bar immediately reached the level of red and endangered. Klein next to him, seeing the scene in front of him, quickly drew his sword and rushed towards the wild boar. Attracts the boar's attention. On the contrary, Kirito was staring at the world announcement, dazed in a daze. He didn't expect that the elite wild monster Wild Boar King would be defeated in less than an hour after the server started. Even during the beta test, the first one to defeat the Wild Boar King was only a day later. Ha 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 ha. Suddenly, Kirito laughed out loud, his eyes filled with unprecedented excitement at this moment. Yes, only in this way is it more interesting. Kirito only felt that he was completely ignited. But what Kirito doesn't know is that this game will eventually become a death game. Time flies. In a blink of an eye, it was afternoon. Even the world and the game is already full of Yusha's halo. In this world, time always passes quickly. Even Kirito felt a little haggard. He spent the whole day today, brushing his level to 6. You know, this is far beyond the existence of most people. He looked at his various statistics. The corners of the mouth were raised slightly, and there was a sense of complacency in his expression. He didn't believe that those 3 people could get to level 6 in one day. You know there are 3 of them. No matter how fast you brush, it is impossible to surpass yourself. However, what Kirito didn't know was, under the leadership of Suyi, a person whose all attributes are S, not only finished brushing the wild area near Novice City, he even came to the next town and wiped out the nearby wild areas. Also discovered the nearby labyrinth area, and explored more than half of it. Suyi's level has reached level 9, and the level of the 2 women has reached the 8 level. There is a lot of equipment on the body, especially the jet black wind robe. Each person has one. Although this wind robe is useless, it can cover the face. For 3 people, it is quite useful. Temporarily retreated from the maze area. Suyi looked at the setting sun in the distance. Can't help muttering to himself, it should be almost the time now. After finishing speaking, Suyi's finger slid down the air, exhaled the game menu, and slid it to the last column. Sure enough, there is no logout button on it. It was not only Suyi who discovered this. There is also Klein, who is very hungry. Klein's current level has reached level 4. It can be regarded as getting started with this game. After playing for a day, he only felt that his stomach was a little hungry. Then he said to Kirito next to him, Kirito, I will go offline first, and I will continue to fight after I have something to eat. With that said, Klein was about to quit the game. However, at this moment, Klein's expression changed. Hey, there is no logout button. Kirito, look carefully, if I remember correctly, it should be at the bottom. Klein, sure enough, there isn't any. Kirito, no, it's this. While speaking, Kirito's fingers slid down in the void, and he brought up the menu bar, ready to demonstrate to Klein. But I found that the logout button seems to be really gone. For a while, the air was a little quiet, but immediately after, Klein lay down on the grass and said, well, after all, today is the first day of going online. It is quite normal for any bugs to appear. Maybe this bug will be fixed soon. Thinking about the current operator, he should be crying to death, ha 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 ha. Wait a minute, if this is the case, won't I be unable to get the pizza and ginger ale I ordered? Kirito, let's call the administrator. When Klein heard Kirito's words, he immediately called the administrator. It's just that the administrator has not responded for a long time. Klein, by the way, is there any other way to quit this game? Kirito bowed his head in thought, but his expression became more and more embarrassing as he continued to think. If the player wants to log out actively, it can only be done in the operation menu, which means that we are now trapped in the game. At this time, the sunset glow became more and more red. A blood-colored glow shrouded the entire game. Suddenly, the situation changed suddenly and the bell rang. Kirito only felt that he was wrapped in an indescribable depression. An ominous premonition emerged in his heart. What the hell happened? Kirito could not help murmuring. On the contrary, Suyi laughed loudly at this moment. Asuna, no, Asuna, CC, the death game will officially start soon, are you ready? Asuna, I can't wait. CC, I'm also curious about what this game of death looks like. And the moment the two female voices fell, a ray of light appeared on their bodies. As the light dissipated, they were all teleported to the square of Novice City. The game of death has officially begun. Boom, 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 boom. The bell continued to echo. Countless rays of light flickered in the square of Novice City. As the light dissipated, a personal figure was teleported into the square. Looking at the scene in front of them, they felt that their brains seemed to be unable to respond for a while. What the hell is going on here? Aren't I still hanging out there? Why did I come here suddenly? Is this a server opening event? And you said you're going to fix the bug that can't be logged out. There are countless questions in the hearts of these people. Because no matter how you think about it, the scene in front of you is really too weird. As time went by, more and more people were teleported into the square. There were dense crowds of people standing in the square, chatting with each other constantly. The slightly noisy voice made people feel a little dizzy. A corner of the square. Suyi, Asuna, and CC were dressed in black robes. They looked at these guys in front of them and talked in low voices. Asuna, CC, have you two seen that couple? You mean the two men who hugged each other? Asuna followed Suyi's gaze and looked forward. I only saw a petite woman with pink hair holding a tall, thin, yellow-haired man in her arms, looking very affectionate. What happened to these two people? CC asked Suyi. I bet these two people are definitely two men. Asuna frowned. Two men. No way, this is too exaggerated. It's not an exaggeration. You remember the faces of these guys now, and after a while, there will be a large-scale makeup removal scene. Hearing Suyi's words, the two women felt very curious, and unconsciously imagined what might happen in a while in their minds. At this moment, a red hexagon appeared in the sky with an exclamation mark in it. It looks like there is a bug in the game. This feeling gave the hearts of everyone present an indescribable pressure. Immediately afterwards, the exclamation mark inside the red hexagon began to spread rapidly in the sky. In a blink of an eye, the rest of the setting sun was completely covered. The entire sky seemed to be smeared with blood. In many people's hearts, some began to panic. What is happening? Let me out quickly, I don't want to play this game anymore. Garbage game, what the hell happened? Just as they roared, the sky seemed to be bleeding. Numerous viscous liquids like blood slowly flowed down from the air. Occasionally flashes and arc. After merging with each other, a giant figure in a red robe appeared in everyone's field of vision. The huge figure can be said to block out the sky. This figure alone is like a mountain, pressing down on everyone's hearts. Following this figure, he kept opening his arms, only to hear him say slowly, "Everyone, welcome to my world. My name is Akihiko Kayaba." Players have noticed that the logout button in the main menu has disappeared. But it's not a problem with the game, it's the original gameplay of SAO, a game where as long as you die in this world, you will really die. Following Kayaba, Akihiko's voice fell. Everyone was in a boil. This is too messy. What is this? That's right. If you do this, aren't you afraid of being arrested? Wait, you're going to be unlucky soon. If you are sensible, let us out quickly. Facing the questions from countless people below, Kayaba Akihiko didn't feel the slightest fluctuation in his heart. Like a quiet and terrifying narrator, he said slowly, "There is only one way to save myself, and that is to clear all floors of SAO. When you defeat the boss on the 100th floor, you will be able to obtain real salvation." As the voice fell, Kayaba Akihiko said again, "In the storage box of everyone, there is a small gift from me for you, please confirm." As Kayaba Akihiko's voice fell, everyone in the square stretched out their fingers and swiped down in the air. Exhaled the menu bar of SAO, and found the so-called gift in the storage bar. That is a mirror. Seeing the scene in front of him, the corners of Suyi's mouth rose slightly. He turned on the recording function in the chat group and directly recorded the scene in front of him. Following these people, they clicked on the mirror in the storage bar, only to see countless brilliant lights flashing. Their forms suddenly changed a lot. Thin become fat, the short became tall, women become men, the young became the old. All people have become their original colors. As for the appearance set up before, with the appearance of mirror props, it has completely become history. This scene is definitely a large-scale makeup removal scene. Ah, you man actually hugged me. Aren't you a woman? You still say you are 17 years old. This is simply a lie. Grandpa, are you the handsome guy who planned to pick on me just now? Hey, why did you suddenly become so short? Weren't you 1.9 meters before? The people around kept showing expressions of astonishment. And this large-scale makeup removal scene was also recorded by Suyi. Uploaded to the chat group. At this moment in the chat group, many members are talking about this mission. They are all curious about what the world in Sao looks like. After all, they have never seen the world in the game. And at this moment, Suyi uploaded this video. And attached text, large-scale makeup removal scene. As everyone clicked on this video, the members of the group were stunned for a moment. Immediately afterwards, they all laughed silly. Edward Elric. Ha 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 ha, what the hell is going on? I really laughed to death. Have you seen the shocked expressions of those guys? Hinata. Wow, I've learned a lot. Whitebeard. Gu la 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 la, what the hell is going on? Suyi explained the matter, and then the members of the entire chat group laughed even more happily. And at this time, Kayaba Akihiko spoke again. Everyone, now the real Sao has officially started, I wish you good luck. Following Kayaba Akihiko's voice fell. His eyes hidden under the red robe seemed to glance at Suyi and the others who were standing in the corner. Then the figure slowly disappeared from everyone's sight. Only the sluggish crowd remained in place, not knowing what to do for a while. At this time, Su said to the two women, Asuna, Cece, let's go directly to the next town and wipe out the entire labyrinth area. Let them never surpass us again. After all, Su glanced at Kirito in the crowd, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Because of the difference in time velocity. So in the world of Asuna, Suyi didn't worry about the passage of time at all. On the contrary, he also enjoys the current game world very much. Just ask which boy doesn't like games. Especially bringing a girl in the game is an unprecedented experience. Almost 2 weeks passed in a blink of an eye. In the past 2 weeks, 1,000 players have killed more than people. The unprecedented pressure was on the hearts of everyone except Suyi and the others. During these 2 weeks, Suyi, Asuna, and Cece visited the entire first floor. All kinds of messy side missions have also been completed. It can be said that it is real, throwing off a large distance from others. As Suyi and the others continue to snowball, this distance will continue to get farther and farther. And when Suyi and the others finished brushing today's labyrinth area, they were about to go back. Suddenly I heard that someone was going to hold a boss meeting on the first floor. Suyi and the others in the boss room had already discovered it. It's just that there are still some places that haven't been explored, so he hasn't entered the room for a long time. They didn't expect that when they had just finished exploring, someone would discover the boss room. Asuna and Cece, let's go and have a look, maybe something interesting will happen. The corners of Suyi's mouth rose slightly, apparently thinking of something funny. Asuna and Cece are headed by Suyi, so they didn't have any objection to Suyi's words at all. Immediately following Suyi, they came to the ancient ruins located on the west of the first floor. They have explored this place. All the good things that can be obtained have been looted by the three of them. So much so that people who came here later thought that this place was just a ruin. Came to the ruins of this ruins. Suyi and the other three were wearing black robes and sitting in a corner. Seeing the players rushing around, he couldn't help but sneer. Hearing Suyi's sneer, Asuna next to him asked Suyi, Suyi, what's the matter? Aang, that's right, have you seen that person not far away? Following Suyi's gaze, Asuna saw a young man with short black hair and a single sword behind his back, walking slowly towards the ruins. I saw it, what's wrong with this person? Remember the first time I met you? Asuna frowned slightly. Before Asuna could react, Cece next to him asked, is this the Kirito you mentioned earlier? Asuna heard CC's reminder and immediately remembered. After Suyi just entered the chat group, what Suyi said to himself. He said at the beginning that if he met a guy named Kirito, he should stay as far away from him as possible. Because this guy is simply a scumbag. Thinking of this, Asuna hurriedly said to Suyi, "Suyi, is this the guy you're talking about?" Suyi nodded slowly. "That's right, it's him. From a certain point of view, this guy is an extremely self-centered person. There's nothing wrong with calling him a scum." When Asuna heard Suyi's words, her expression showed a little understanding. "Maybe this is why he came here alone. You must know that this is a death game. The players are basically united with each other. It is indeed very rare for one person to act like this." Asuna whispered to Suyi thoughtfully. "I don't know if it's because Kirito is the protagonist of Sao." He subconsciously looked towards Suyi and the others. It's just that the three of them were wearing black robes, so they couldn't observe any information at all. He just unconsciously had some doubts in his heart. It seems to be curious why the three people not far away are wearing black robes. And at this moment, a man with blue hair walked in the center of the ruins. I only heard him say to the crowd, "Thank you for being invited here today. I am Diabel, and I think I am a knight by profession." As Diabel's voice fell, the players gathered around suddenly complained, "Hey, I said that there doesn't seem to be any occupation system in this game." "Ha ha ha ha, brother, the meeting is not for joking. You know we gave up the time for leveling and came to attend your meeting. Can't you hurry up and say something?" The expression on Diabel's face changed instantly, becoming more serious than ever before. Diabel said to everyone, "Today, my team and I found the boss's room on the top floor of the tower. We must defeat the boss to reach the second floor. Only in this way can we go one step closer to true salvation. So, I need your strength to prove to more players that even in this death game, we can actually regain our lives and break through the shackles of the death game. What I said is not wrong. Everyone." Diabel seems to have a bit of a leadership temperament by nature. Following his impassioned speech, most people were basically infected by Diabel's words. Can't help applauding. Clap clap, clap clap, clap clap. The applause lasted for a long time, and finally Diabel stretched out his hands and pressed down slightly. The thunderous applause slowly stopped. Seeing these players in front of him, he really recognized his words. The smile on his face has also become more confident. Then without further ado, let's start the strategy meeting now. Because the first floor boss cannot be defeated at will, I suggest that everyone form a 6-person team, which will be safer. We want to minimize the damage, only in this way can we pass the 100 floors. After Diabel's voice fell, everyone began to discuss how to form a team, who would be the captain, and so on. Only Kirito sat in the seat, looking very embarrassed. He is used to walking alone. During this period of time, he relied on his experience in beta testing to frantically train his level. Except for Klein, who I just met, I have never communicated with anyone else. Now suddenly it is necessary to form a team. This made him not know what to do for a while. And just when he was hesitating, the others were almost formed. Only the most conspicuous Suyi-san and Kirito were left. Taking a deep breath, Tongren walked slowly towards Suyi and the others. Kirito looked at the three people in front of him and said, "You." But before Kirito finished speaking, Asuna interrupted Kirito's words. "It's just that Kirito has not finished speaking." Asuna said to Kirito in front of her, "If you want to join our team, we refuse." There was no emotion in Asuna's cold voice. She didn't even want to look at Kirito in front of her. It seems that Kirito is the most disgusting thing in this world. Kirito was stunned for a moment. He didn't know why the girl in front of him hated him so much. But now that everyone else has formed a team, he still wants to work harder. Immediately, he patted his chest and said to Yasna in front of him, "My strength is very strong. If you form a team with me, you will definitely not suffer. In this death game, having a strong strength can really get a lot of preferential treatment." But Kirito's words obviously picked the wrong person. If you really want to talk about strong strength, then in today's game world, who can be more powerful than them? During these 2 weeks, they almost swallowed most of the resources. At an extremely fast speed, the level was swiped over and over again. Although it is the first floor, each of Suyi and the others has a super growth weapon. Swallowed 100% of 90% of the resources. Then Kirito swallowed 5%. The last 5% is the resource obtained by other players. Relying on their current level and equipment alone, there is absolutely no problem pushing all the way to the 10th floor. If it wasn't for Suyi's desire to lay the foundation for Asuna, Suyi wouldn't have stayed on the first floor for such a long time. He didn't come to this meeting until they had explored everything on the first floor. So, at this moment, it is ridiculous for Kirito to say that he is strong in front of Asuna and the others. This also made Asuna feel that Kirito and Suyi in front of her were right. This guy is a scum. In this lost game, give others strong confidence, but if the strength is not that strong. In the end, the one who was injured was the person who teamed up with Kirito. Asuna stood up slowly. Her eyes hidden under the black robe just looked at Kirito in front of her coldly. Seeing this, Kirito took a step back subconsciously. He didn't know when he had offended this person in front of him. Just when he was about to say something, I only heard Asuna say lightly, "Get lost." Although this is only a short word, but it is clean and crisp, and it is loud. Kirito's brows were instantly wrinkled. And at this moment, Suyi also slowly stood up. He came in front of Asuna and stood between the two of them. I only heard Suyi say to Tongren, "Many people's attention is now on us. If you don't want to continue to attract people's attention, please find a seat and sit down. We refuse to team up with you." Kirito glanced at the people around him from the corner of his eye. Sure enough, those people who found it were all looking in their direction with curious eyes. This made Kirito grit his teeth, and sat on the side seat unwillingly. Diabelle saw that Kirito and the trio did not successfully form a team, and did not say much. Immediately continued to host, said, "Since everyone has basically formed a team, then we..." Wait a moment. Suddenly, there was a shout in the distance. I saw a man with a hedgehog head jumping down from the high steps in a few steps. He glanced at the people sitting there, and a little resentment flashed in his eyes from time to time. I only saw him stretch out his finger, pointing at himself, looking as if he was invincible, and said, "I am called the King of Teeth. Before entering the boss room, I have something to say. In it, someone has to apologize to the 2,000 people who died first." As Kibau's words fell, he stretched out his finger and pointed at the people in front of him. Everyone's expressions changed slightly at this time. They looked at each other with different expressions, which were hard to describe. Kirito's expression at this time became even more ugly. His eyes were fixed on the ground, and his hands were tightly clenched, as if he was engaged in a fierce ideological struggle. Diabelle looked at Kibau next to him, and said, "Mr. Kibau, could it be that the people you mentioned are the beta testers who obtained the experience qualification before?" Kibau waved his hand, needless to say. Those guys who won the beta test, left the rookies behind and disappeared on the first day of the game. They occupy the best hunting grounds, complete the best tasks, and only care about their own continuous improvement. But he doesn't care about other people's life or death at all. This kind of guy must make them apologize. When Kibau said this, the expression on his face was a little ferocious. He gritted his teeth and said again, "Not only do you have to apologize, but you also have to kneel down and apologize to us, and spit out the money and items you have saved, otherwise, as team members, we have no way to trust our lives." When Kirito heard Kibau's words, he felt a little uncomfortable at first, but now it became more obvious. Faintly, his body seemed to be trembling even more. However, at this moment, a cold snort sounded. It was this cold snort that broke Kirito's extremely excited mood. He turned his head to look to the side, and what he saw were the three people in black robes. Kirito was not the only one who heard this cold snort. Kibau standing in front also heard Suyi's cold snort. He looked at the three men in black, without any hesitation, and said directly, "If I'm not wrong, the three of you should be testers. Are you afraid to see people in black robes?" After Yuang's words fell, everyone turned around and looked at Suyi and the others next to him. Facing everyone's gaze, Su didn't feel the slightest bit of fear. He sat on the seat, and said calmly, "I should say that you are worthy of being called the King of Kiba. This kind of ability to catch and bite, even a dog can't match it." After speaking, Suyi slowly stood up from his seat. Immediately afterwards, Asuna and CC also followed behind Suyi and walked towards Kibao. Kibao looked at the three people in front of him and walked towards him, and a palpitation suddenly appeared in his heart. This palpitation was something he had never experienced before. You three beta testers, what exactly do you want to do? Let me tell you, I'm not scared of Kibao. If you are willing to kneel down now, beg our forgiveness, and then spit out all the equipment and money, then we can't forgive you. Kibao's ugly face was reflected in Suyi's eyes. Suyi immediately laughed wildly, ha 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 ha, you said we are beta testers. Let me tell you, even those beta testers are nothing but rubbish in front of us. And where do you think this is? This is Sao, a death game. And what is the original sin of the game? After all, it's food. It's food, vegetables. Ah, at this time, among the ruins, everyone could feel the air, as if stagnant. Many people even felt that the three men in black robes in front of them gave people a very strange feeling. And at this moment, Diabel, as the organizer of this meeting, took the lead in breaking the current calm. Ahem, I want to say something about this matter. As Diabel said, he took out a simple notebook from his body and said to everyone, this is a novice guide distributed by the item store for free, and the people who first distributed this guide are those players in the closed beta. Anyone can get the information, but even so, many players died, so. Having said that, Diabel didn't say any more. A guy who shared information, but still died. After all, it is food. Just like what Suyi said just now. However, as the organizer of this time, Diabel did not express his support for any one person. Instead, he changed the topic calmly and said to everyone present, everyone, it is precisely because of this that our strategy this time is the most important. Only when we succeed once and defeat the boss on the first floor can more people believe that we will definitely be able to come out of this death game. After Diabel's voice fell, everyone echoed loudly. That's right, we want Kayaba Akihiko to see that our bravery is not as weak as he imagined. We are willing to take the lead in charging and let more people believe that tomorrow will be better. Let us succeed once and defeat the boss on the first floor. The people around kept shouting their own voices. This is because they have accumulated too much pressure during these days. The shouting at this time was just enough to vent their emotions. Feeling these guys, wanting to fight to prove their passion, Diabel immediately said, everyone, let us take advantage of this momentum and head towards the boss room. Let it see our strength. Kibao looked at Diabel next to him, and then at Suyi in black robe in front of him. Gritting his teeth tightly, his expression was full of unwillingness. He looked fiercely at Suyi in front of him, you fool, don't think this matter is over like this. You just wait for me, after you finish fighting the boss, I'll see how I deal with you. Are you threatening me? Threat, just treat it as a threat. I dare say you are definitely a beta tester, I will definitely let you kneel in front of me, and then hand over all the items and money. Not for anything else, just for those who died player. After saying that, Kibao turned around and left, followed behind the large troops heading to the boss room. At this time, CC said to Suyi with his own lazy voice, I didn't expect that our group leader would be threatened one day. Asuna's voice was also filled with disgust towards Kibao. This guy just wants to stand on the moral high ground, so that the beta testers can spit out the hard-earned items and money. In this kind of killing game, isn't this a kind of murder? The nature can be said to be even worse, and it's also very disgusting. For people like Kibao, both Asuna and CC can see very clearly. As for the other people, the main reason why they didn't say much was because they wanted to get a share of it. After all, people are selfish. However, what Kibao may not know is that the grass on the grave of anyone who threatens Suyi is already 3 feet high. After yawning, Su said to the two girls, okay, let's follow at the end and see how powerful they are. Listen to you, Suyi. The two girls nodded slightly, and then followed Suyi, walking at the end of the large group. Soon, everyone came to the door of the boss's room. The size of the gate can be said to be extremely magnificent. The appearance of the boss and the presence of its guards are engraved on it. It just looks a bit blurry. Only in the eyes, there is a red light shining, which looks very scary. The imposing manner of the gate alone made many people tremble with fear. This is their first challenge to boss. The greatest horror is always the unknown. But Diabel took a deep breath and said to everyone, "Everyone, if you are afraid, get out now, there is still time." Diabel said that on purpose. Sure enough, as Diabel's voice fell, the others shouted, "Afraid? We are absolutely not afraid. We want to be the vanguard of everyone. We must use our own hands to give more hope to others." However, at this moment, Kibao turned to look at the last Suyi and the others. He only heard him say to Suyi and the others in a strange voice, "I think it's the three of them who are really scared. Just now I said that I am stronger than the beta testers, but now I'm at the back. I'm afraid I was bragging just now. HMPH, I'm still hiding in the black robe. Isn't that the only way I can brag with confidence?" Just after Kibao finished speaking, the boss door slowly opened. Seeing this, Kibao snorted immediately, "HMPH, you trash, if you want me to tell you, you'd better get out of here, otherwise, it will hinder us." After speaking, Kibao followed behind Diabel and ran towards the boss room. As the door of the boss room was completely closed, darkness completely enveloped everyone. At this moment, the surroundings seemed to be surrounded by a psychedelic. The entire room is filled with psychedelic colors. Immediately afterwards, a boss holding a battle axe and a shield appeared in the eyes of everyone. Roar! The roar of the boss echoed in everyone's ears. All I saw was the side of the boss, flashing lights one by one. As the light dissipated, the three personal guards of the boss also appeared in the room. Then rushed towards many players. Seeing this, Diabel waved his right hand holding the blade, "Start attacking." Following the voice of Wadia Bell, all the players rushed towards the boss, even Kirito was no exception. Only Suyi and the others walked towards the boss in a leisurely manner. "Come on, let the boss see how powerful we are. Ah, I'm on fire. Oh," everyone shouted loudly, which was a certain encouragement for themselves. For a while, it was like the two armies were at war. The boss and the players were immediately mixed together. Team A, Team C, switch, it's coming, Team B, stop it. Team C stays defensive, ready to switch. While Diabel was fighting, he was constantly directing others to attack and defend. The temperament of the leader has been brought into full play. Everyone except Suyi, under Diabel's command, continued to attack the boss. The blood bar of the boss is gradually decreasing steadily. It's just that when the boss's blood bar just dropped a tube. Suddenly, a lot of steam emerged from the boss's body. Not only the boss, but even the three personal guards of the boss also emitted bursts of steam. The steam came from their bodies. As they floated out neatly, the movements of the bosses increased by 3 times. When Kirito saw this, he immediately shouted, "Not good. Get out quickly. The boss is gone." When he was in the beta test, Kirito encountered a boss who would go berserk. Therefore, when he saw this scene, he was the first to shout out to remind everyone. But even so, it's too late. Just when Kirito's voice fell, Team A, who rushed to the front, was directly swept down by the giant axe of the boss. The sharp giant axe easily chopped off the bodies of the 6 members of Team A. Their expressions were frozen in shock and fear. "Defend. Hurry up and defend. Team C, don't retreat. Obey orders." The sudden scene made everyone panic. Even if Diabel kept shouting, it was of no avail. Horror has completely filled their hearts. I saw them retreating constantly, their faces full of panic. This is Kayaba Akihiko's conspiracy. There is no way to defeat this kind of boss. 6 people who were full of blood were killed with 1 axe. How else do we fight? Open the door. The boss door can't be opened. The first one to rush to the door of the boss room is Kibao, who rushed the fastest just now. At this time, his psychological defense has completely collapsed. In his opinion, with them now, there is no way to defeat the boss who has gone berserk. At this time, Diabel's body couldn't help shaking. He kept repeating in his heart, "This is impossible. Obviously during the beta test, this boss did not go berserk, why is this happening now? No, we have to pull ourselves together. Once the boss room is entered, it is impossible to exit from it. Only by defeating the boss in front of us can we continue to live. Otherwise, we will surely die. But can we really defeat the boss in front of us who has gone berserk? That kind of powerful attack and terrifying attack speed is simply not something they can compete with at this stage. Just when Diabell thought of this, he only heard Kirito not far away, shouting loudly, "What are you three doing? Hurry up and retreat. There is no way to defeat him with just the three of you." Following Kirito's words, Diabell also saw Suyi and the others, who were already standing in front of the boss. Roar. When the boss saw Suyi and the other three standing in front of him, he roared immediately. Before the personal guards rushed to Suyi, the boss swung his huge axe, smashing towards Suyi and the others in front like a bamboo. At this time, Suyi said lightly, "Asuna, CC, it's our turn to perform now." Chapter 71. Now it's our turn to perform. Followed by Suyi's words. CC and Asuna rushed forward at an extremely fast speed. When they took the first step, they pulled out the sharp sword pinned to their waists. The action is natural and fast. All in one go, at an extremely fast speed, rushed towards the boss. With only two people, you are definitely not the opponent of the boss. You guys should withdraw quickly. Kirito shouted anxiously to Asuna and CC. He wanted to step forward to help the two girls, but at this time he was stopped by the boss's personal guards. For a while, they fell into entanglement. If this continues, they will die. As Kirito's voice fell, his blade speed became a little faster. The speed is not at all like the speed that most players on the first floor can achieve. Diabell felt that if it was Kirito in front of him, he might be able to defeat the boss in front of him. However, just when everyone thought so in their hearts, the boss's cry of pain drew everyone's attention back to Asuna and CC. The rapier and western sword in the hands of Asuna and CC were shining brightly at the same time. One hit, another hit. Hit and go. In the blink of an eye, many holes appeared on the boss's body. Fragments like blood, even more like snowflakes, slowly fell from the air. Only the blood bar of the boss was seen, and it dropped rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, the last tube of blood fell. The pupils of Kirito, Diabell and the surrounding people all shrank suddenly. They looked at the scene in front of them in disbelief. They have already experienced the strength of the boss just now. The attack power brought by the crazy speed and giant axe bonus. It's not something that people like them can resist. Any touch, the result is real death. But these two men in black robes held sharp swords and easily did what they couldn't do. This extremely strong sense of impact impacted their brains. This is too strong. Looking at their speed and strength, I'm afraid they are much higher than us in terms of level alone. With them here, maybe we don't have to die. It's great, I thought I was going to die. Now the boss has only the last tube of blood left. I don't believe that we have no way to defeat the boss in front of us. Really strong. These two guys. This kind of power is simply too strong. Kirito and Diabell murmured at the same time. As the beta testers of the game, they have a deeper understanding of the game. But even there is no way to reach their combat power on the first floor. It's so terrifying. And at this moment, under the gaze of everyone, the boss directly threw away the giant axe in his hand. Changed from behind to a nodashi. The moment when the wild sword was held in the hands of the boss. The boss who had already entered the berserk had become at least 3 times stronger in his aura and coercion. Kirito's complexion suddenly changed, and he shouted in shock, "What? The weapon is not a scimitar, but a wild sword. It's different from the beta test." Diabell also reacted at this time, and he quickly said to Suyi and the others in black robes, "Hey! Back up quickly. Jump back with all your strength. The attribute bonus of the nodashi is much stronger than the scimitar." Diabell's words fell into the ears of Suyi and the others. But everyone didn't respond to what he said. After Asuna and CC finished attacking, they put their sword blades back into the scabbard, and obediently stood behind Suyi. The boss, on the other hand, roared like a scream, his legs exerted force, and he jumped onto the pillar next to him. And moving quickly on these pillars. Boom, 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 boom. The boss moves faster and faster on the pillars. The sound is also getting denser. Like a red lightning bolt, after accumulating a lot of power, it suddenly swooped towards Suyi from the air. The nodashi even condensed a crimson light, which looked extremely permeating. When Kirito saw this scene, his heart sank suddenly. It can't be done. It's too late. These 3 people are dead. Diabell also trembled in his heart. Originally, he planned to rush forward, grab the last blow, and enjoy the special reward of the boss exclusively. But now in his heart, there is only rejoicing left. It can be said that it is fortunate that he did not go. If he were to go, he would be the one to die. The thoughts in everyone's minds are almost the same. They all felt that Suyi and the others would surely die. But at this moment, Suyi stretched out his hand behind his back. An épée as black as ink was tightly held by Suyi in his hand. As the boss waved the nodashi and fell from the air, Su stepped forward one step at a time. The épée drew an arc in the air, and blatantly hit the boss's nodashi. The boss's nodashi collided with Suyi's épée. All I could hear was a deafening explosion, piercing into everyone's ears. Bang! There was a huge gust of wind in the boss room in an instant. The strong wind blew the black robe on Suyi's body, revealing his true face. Asuna and Cece stretched out their white catkins, and slightly pulled the hoods on their heads. He didn't show his face. Is this the boss on the first floor? It's really too weak. Suyi muttered to himself. Immediately afterwards, he grabbed his black robe with his hand and waved towards it. The black robe instantly fell off Suyi's body. It revealed Suyi's original appearance under the black robe. All he saw was Suyi, who was wearing a metal-colored armor, even more decorated with jewels. It looks like the armor of the nobles in ancient times. Exuding jewels, but also has a ruthless temperament. This set of equipment completely stupefied those people. They couldn't believe it, and looked at this set of equipment on Suyi. Is this really the equipment that only the first floor can have? This is too cool. When they were still wearing cloth armor and cloth clothes, Suyi had already put on the jewel armor. This simply refreshed their three views. And at this moment, Suyi's other hand also pressed on the hilt of the heavy sword. Roar! This seems to be the last straw that breaks the boss. Along with Su, he held a sword in both hands. The power of the heavy sword was used to the extreme by Suyi. In the blink of an eye, the wild sword in the boss's hand was cut in half by Suyi's épée. Immediately afterwards, Suyi's legs violently exerted force. The whole person rushed towards the head of the boss. The sword light flickered. The blade seemed to cut through the space. Directly cut off the boss's head. In an instant, the boss turned into countless fragments, and slowly dissipated into the room under everyone's silent gaze. At this moment, they only felt that the Suyi in front of them was simply not too strong. And at this time, among the crowd, came a voice. Why, you are so powerful, why didn't you attack just now? Didn't you come to the boss until those 6 people were hacked to death? The one who spoke was none other than Kibao, who had been bouncing around in front of Suyi just now. Hearing Kibao's words, Suyi smiled. And the next second, his heavy sword was pointed at Kibao. At the same time, Suyi exuded an aura stronger than the boss. Suyi exuded a terrifying aura. The imposing manner is powerful, stronger than the boss just defeated. So much so that Kibao's lips trembled and trembled. However, he still glanced at the people around him. I have a little confidence in my heart. There are people all around here, so I asked Suyi what he could do to him. Thinking of this, Kibao showed a smile, but he took it back in an instant. His eyes fell on Suyi in front of him again. He looked at the armor on Suyi in front of him, and the greedy desire that was about to come out was revealed in his eyes. This greedy desire completely devoured Kibao's sanity in the blink of an eye. He said to Suyi in front of him, "Do you know? You have to apologize to those 6 people. You must kneel down in front of us, and then hand over all the equipment and money to the people present, otherwise I won't forgive you." Saying that, Kibao took a few steps forward. It can be said that it is closer to Suyi's heavy sword. It will be fully reflected without fear. There were quite a few people around. After hearing Kibao's words, they all looked at the equipment on Suyi. I also thought that after defeating the boss, there should be better equipment. Thinking of this, many people echoed their voices. Kau is right, you must apologize to us. You must kneel to us. Then hand over all your equipment and money to us. If you don't do this, we will never forgive you. When Suyi heard these words, it was as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. Immediately laughed out loud. Then he said to the people in front of him, "If I'm not mistaken, the ones talking now should be the ones who ran the fastest just now. Especially you, Mr. Kibao. I saw the expression on your face when you ran to the door of the boss room and found that the door couldn't be opened. It's really miserable. Ha 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 ha. Su Yi's joking words fell into the ears of Yuang and everyone else. As the commander this time, Diabel indeed saw Kibao's unbearable performance just now. Especially because of his actions, there was a loophole in the command, if it wasn't for Su Yi's appearance. Maybe more people will die in this boss battle, or even all of them will die. Really, no matter what, Su Yi and the others saved them. Kau, stop talking, if this time is not because of. When Diabel was about to say something, Kibao turned to ask, is it possible that what I said is wrong? Then Kibawang said to Su Yi again, don't waste everyone's time. You are definitely a beta tester. So quickly kneel down and apologize to us, and then give us the equipment and money with both hands. At the end, Kibao showed a smile even more. He bet that Su Yi would definitely do this. Because he has no choice. But just when Kibao thought of this, Su Yi suddenly laughed out loud. Ha 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 ha, you say I'm an original beta tester. Don't be ridiculous. Don't compare me with that kind of player who has advanced intelligence but is still rubbish. Because they are not worthy at all. You are too. If we hadn't just finished exploring the first floor, the boss battle here would not even have your business at all. As Su Yi's voice fell, Kirito suddenly remembered the trio that Klein had told him back then. Could it be the three people in front of me? Looking at the equipment on Su Yi in front of him, Tongren only felt that his pride was completely crushed by Su Yi in front of him. Compared with Su Yi, his so-called game talent, even with his status as a beta tester, is just rubbish. Is this person in front of me really a human? When Kiba Wang heard Su Yi's words, his expression became even crazier. You guy, dare to insult us, believe it or not. Puff. Before Kibao finished speaking, he only felt a gust of cold wind, rubbing against his face and flowing to the side. In the next second, one of the people who made Su Yi kneel down just now was cut in half by Su Yi. It turned into bloody fragments and disappeared into this game. At the same time, in reality, he is also completely dead. And the green buoy on Su Yi's head also turned red at this time. Red, it is the killer player. And Su Yi was the first player to kill someone. Everyone was stunned at the moment. The boss room fell into an unprecedented silence. In terms of coordination, Su Yi's aura is even stronger than that of the boss. They only felt that Kibao had provoked someone who absolutely should not be provoked. Kibao turned his head to look at the dead man next to him. His heart trembled. He subconsciously said to Kibao, what are you doing? You killed him just now. Ah, why are you so nervous? I just disposed of a piece of garbage. Su Yi said again. I forgot to say, anyone who threatens me will generally not survive tomorrow. Following Su Yi's words, another person was cut in half by Su Yi. And this person is also the person who made Su kneel down before. The devil. This is definitely the devil. This game can actually kill people. This is simply too scary. No, I don't want to die yet, please let me go. I'm willing to give you all my equipment and money. Anyone who mentioned Su Yi before. At this time, they all knelt in front of Su Yi, kowtowing to Su Yi continuously. So much so that the others subconsciously took 3 steps back. Kirito and Diabel were even more lost in thought. They looked at the scene in front of them and didn't know what to say for a while. They didn't even stop the matter in front of them. Instead, they fell into silence. I only saw Su Yi coming in front of Yuang, and said to Yuang, what about you, Yuang? As Su Yi's voice fell, Yuang knelt down in front of Su Yi with a bang. If you say spineless, he is the one with the least spine. If Yuang would rather die than surrender, Su Yi would respect Yuang and give him a good time. But Kibao and these people in front of them just like to bully the weak, and like to stand on the commanding heights of morality and force others to satisfy their inner desires. For such a person, Su Yi simply looked down on him. Feel the despair of death. As Su Yi's words fell, Su Yi threw several knives at each of them. I only saw Kibao and others, instantly turned into fragments, and completely disappeared from the world. At the same time, the voice of the chat group also sounded in Su Yi's mind. Along with the voice of the chat group, it sounded in Su Yi's mind. The corners of Su Yi's mouth raised slightly. It seems that the task this time should be successfully completed. Suyi put the épée on his back, and then led the two girls towards the second floor. Until Suyi and the others left the boss room, those people didn't move at all. They have no way to recover from the shock just now. But Suyi and the others felt that their bodies seemed to have undergone some changes. A lot of skills poured into my mind. Not only that, there are also various comprehensions about the way of swordsmanship, which made Suyi and the others grow a lot. After digesting for a while, Suyi said to Asuna, Asuna, CC, you can take off the black robe when you reach the second floor. In this way, no one will doubt you. At most, they will suspect that you are beta testers, and they will not think that you are my teammates. When Asuna heard this, she immediately took off her hood, turned to Suyi and said, what are you talking about, Suyi? If you really want to say it, you are completely protecting us. Quote. CC, yes, Suyi, this way of taking the blame on yourself is very cheating. After hearing what the two women said, Suyi smiled. But he didn't say anything more, but said to the two women, okay, you two continue to play, I'll go back first, and contact the group if you have anything to do. After speaking, Suyi's figure faded away into the world of Sao. As an existence far beyond this world, Suyi can freely control his body. Just relying on the restraint of the fully submersible helmet, there is no way to limit Suyi's power. Watching Suyi leave in front of him, CC said to Asuna next to her, with Suyi's protection, it really feels like home, right Asuna? Asuna nodded slightly, with a soft light shining in her eyes, she subconsciously said, yes. But when Asuna finished speaking, she found that CC had already walked towards the second floor. Immediately, Asuna said to CC, wait for me. After speaking, Asuna ran towards CC. Marvel World. Gila is holding the card Suyi gave her, and is constantly spending money in the central city of Monaco. It is said that it is nature for women to love beauty. Even Gila, the goddess of death, is no exception. Gila already had 4 handbags in her hands. But she was still shopping alone with great interest. But at this moment, Gila suddenly looked to her right side. There was a little seriousness on the delicate and pretty face that had no expression at all. It's time to come, Hela murmured to herself. It happened to be overheard by a man passing by. Seeing Hela's explosive figure and stunner-like top-notch appearance, the man suddenly became excited. I saw this man pointing at himself and said, hey beauty, did you just say that it's really time for me to come? Before Gila could answer the man's words, a deafening voice was heard. The ground in the mall began to tremble. Boom, 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 the sound is getting closer. In the next second, I saw only a huge steel figure rushing out from the direction Gila was looking at. The gravel that was thrown up also fell directly on the man's body. The man was directly pressed into the pile of rubble. Bang, bang, bang. The steel figure walked towards Gila. When passing by the pile of rubble, there was no hesitation in the slightest. Stepped directly on top of the rubble pile. The man didn't even make a cry. Only blood was seen flowing from the stone pestle. Gila watched the steel figure gradually approaching, her heart sank slowly. Gila let go of her hand and let the clothes she just bought fall to the ground. Then he said coldly to the steel figure in front of him, I never thought that Odin would even send the destroyer to kill me. Hela murmured to herself. As her words fell, she ran her hands back to stroke her hair. The black and green battle suit appeared on Gila out of thin air. At the same time, her body slowly floated in the air. He looked at the destroyer in front of him with a cold expression. A former member of Asgard, Gila is well aware of the power of the destroyer. The destroyer is made of Asgard Uru metal material, which is almost indestructible and can destroy all known substances by itself. Its face can emit continuous high-temperature beams that can melt almost all substances. It can also transform itself. It was built by Odin to resist the invasion of the Earth by the cosmic gods and to protect the Earth. These alone are enough to explain the strength of the destroyer. At this time, Luoji, who was outside the mall, was already full of excitement in his eyes. The words that Odin said back then echoed in his mind. As long as whoever kills the mission target first can become the king of Asgard. Thinking of this, Loki said with a smile, Thor, it seems that this time I will be the first to succeed. As Loki's words fell, he immediately controlled the destroyer and attacked Hela. The moment the destroyer stepped forward, his eyes were condensed with a golden light. As the rays of light continued to condense, the power on the destroyer became more terrifying. Lol. Unexpected. In the eyes of the destroyer, a golden blazing beam suddenly burst out. The illusion that the light beam almost burns the space. The moment the terrifying high-temperature light beam appeared, it shot towards Hela with overwhelming force. Hela's face remained unchanged, and she waved her hands. Under Hela's control, the swords of the night sky hovered beside her. If you listen carefully at this time, you will be able to hear the sword of the night sky, the sound of the sword constantly swinging. Seeing the terrifying high-temperature light beam about to devour Hela, Hela's catkin swung forward immediately. This is not over yet. After waving Hela's arm once, it didn't stop at all. Divine power poured out from the body continuously. Turning into a sword in the night sky, it also flew towards the high-temperature beam at an extremely fast speed. Bang! The two collide. The terrifying high-temperature light beam instantly devoured Hela's night sky sword. But Hela's sword of the night sky is like infinity. Wave after wave, they rushed towards the destroyer's beam crazily. Centered on the two, this force is constantly turbulent and backlogged. Immediately afterwards, a mushroom cloud came into everyone's eyes. Everyone saw that the central shopping mall of Monaco disappeared completely with the appearance of this mushroom cloud. The appearance of the mushroom cloud completely devoured the central shopping mall of Monaco. The sweeping mushroom cloud turned over the fire mist, burning everything around. Everyone could feel that the unprecedented gust of wind spread out around the center of the Monaco Central Mall. A large number of building glass was shattered. In an extremely luxurious steakhouse not far from the Monaco Central Mall, Tony Stark took the lead in reflecting it. He originally wanted to have dinner with Pepper. But this sudden change made Tony Stark subconsciously stand up and protect Pepper in his arms. Next second, bang bang bang, the glass in the steakhouse shattered instantly. There are even many cracks on the walls. Steakhouses could collapse at any moment. Seeing this scene in front of him, Tony Stark's heart suddenly sank. If he remembers correctly, Suyi's female companion, Hela, seems to be shopping in the Monaco Central Mall right now. Tony Stark yelled angrily. Thinking of Suyi's terrifying strength, Tony Stark only felt a little flustered. Little Pepper also reacted quickly. She said to Tony Stark in front of her, "Tony, Hela. I know, but before that, I'll send you back," Tony Stark said, and threw the suitcase next to him to the ground. Stepping on it, the steel suit wrapped Tony Stark in it at an extremely fast speed. I saw Tony Stark took Pepper in his arms, and then flew out of the steakhouse. After putting Pepper in a safe place, Tony Stark came to the hotel again. Put on a more powerful steel suit. This steel suit is Tony Stark, the Mark VI new energy armor that has just been researched recently. It is a new element that Tony Stark researched after he got what Suyi gave him. The bonus that this element brings to Tony Stark can be said to be very powerful. To be on the safe side, Tony Stark still put on this armor. Immediately, it flew towards the Monaco Central Mall at a very fast speed. At the same time, the dark clouds in the sky became thicker and thicker. Thunder roared in the dark clouds. Sweeping gusts of cold wind. Sir, an unknown energy body is detected to be approaching rapidly. 500 meters, 400 meters, 200 meters, 50 meters, as Jarvis kept reminding himself. Tony Stark looked forward with a serious expression. All he saw was a strong man with a shawl and blonde hair holding a hammer, appearing in front of him. The strong man was in the air, and when he saw Tony Stark, his expression was also stunned. However, he didn't pay much attention to it, but flew towards the central city of Monaco at an extremely fast speed. Seeing this, Tony Stark followed closely behind. With the arrival of the two, they only saw two figures facing each other in the ruins of the central city of Monaco. One is Hela in combat form, and the other is the destroyer of Asgard. The two of them stared there, as if looking for each other's weaknesses. However, when Thor and Tony Stark arrived successively, they broke the current stagnant atmosphere. Tony Stark looked at Hela ahead, his pupils shrank suddenly. Are you Hela? Tony Stark has never heard of Hela having any strange powers. Therefore, this scene now shocked Tony Stark very much. Hela nodded slightly, then looked at the blonde man in front of her. Because she felt Odin's blood from Thor's body. Immediately, Hela said to Thor, "You should be the son of Odin. I never thought that Odin would send his own son and the destroyer here to kill me." Thor looked at Hela in front of him with an indescribably strange expression. Because he could also feel the weirdness of the woman in front of him. But now Thor is still a little arrogant. He looked at the destroyer next to him, and said, "I don't need the help of the destroyer. I think this is my brother Loki who stole him out." Following Thor's voice fell, Rocky's figure appeared in the ruins of the Monaco Central Mall. "Thor, if it wasn't for me, you might not be able to find your target this time." Loki's joking voice came from afar. At the same time, it also attracted the attention of Hela and Tony Stark. Tony Stark's face changed. "Thor, Loki, are you a mythical character? Are you a god?" Thor nodded slightly. "We came to the atrium from Asgard to complete Father Odin's mission." When Thor said this, he looked at Hela in front of him. It's just that he found that the corners of Hela's mouth were raised, and there was even a playful look in her eyes. This kind of expression makes Thor, who is now extremely proud, feel very strange. "What is your expression? Aren't you afraid that I will take you back to Asgard? I will go back to Asgard sooner or later to take back my throne. But is your younger brother really Odin's son?" Hela's short sentence revealed too much information. It not only made Thor stunned for a moment, but also made Loki's face change slightly. "What do you mean by that?" Thor was the first to worry. He would not allow anyone to insult his brother. Although Thor is proud now, he still loves his younger brother very much. From a certain point of view, this pair of brothers absolutely love each other and kill each other. What else can it mean? "Of course I'm asking you again, is your younger brother picked up by Odin? He doesn't have the slightest breath of blood on his body, and he is still a disgusting frost giant. As the goddess of war who fought in the 9 realms before. Hela is very familiar with these breaths. And Hela's words just now angered Loki even more. "You woman, go to hell, I'll kill you now." Loki is basically the god of lies, basically no one can deceive Loki. So when Hela said this, Loki realized that Hela was not lying. This means that what Hela said is the truth. But even if he is not a child of Odin, so what? As long as he can kill the person in front of him, he will still be the next king of Asgard. Thinking of this, without any hesitation, Loki immediately controlled Asgard Destroyer and launched an attack on Hela. When Thor saw this, he didn't hesitate at all. He waved his hammer and rushed towards Hela. Tony Stark took a deep breath. For these gods in front of him, Tony Stark was somewhat stressed. But thinking of that guy from Suyi, he suddenly regained his confidence. As long as Sue came back, he would be able to solve the problem in front of him. Thinking of this, Tony Stark drove the steel suit and stopped in front of Thor. The Monaco Central Mall, which had already become ruins, was once again in battle at this time. Shish, shish, shish. Hundreds of night sky swords were summoned out of thin air by Hela with divine power, and rushed towards the destroyer in front of them amidst the wind and clouds. At the same time, Tony Stark and Thor also fought together. The thunder in the sky cooperated with Thor, sometimes sending down terrifying lightning strikes. Bang! A circle of thunder exploded. A small hole appeared in the ground instantly. Tony Stark obviously also knows the horrors of thunder. I saw a large amount of flames gushing out from behind him, pushing him up from the ground. When flying up, Tony Stark's shoulder even popped out a miniature missile, locked onto Thor's body and launched it. The sound of several explosions echoed in everyone's ears. The crowd continued to fight in the ruins of the Monaco Center Mall. At this time, Monaco also dispatched a large number of helicopters, hovering at low altitude to observe all this. What the hell happened here? Report, there seems to be someone fighting in the Central Mall. We only recognized one of them, it seems to be Iron Man Tony Stark. Tony Stark, it is not only the local forces in Monaco who have heard the news. Even S.H.I.E.L.D. got the news in the fastest time. At this point they had just finished dealing with the Red Giant. It can be said that it paid a huge price. But now, after getting information from Monaco, Nick Fury's head is getting bigger again. Immediately, Nick Fury immediately issued an order. Immediately send someone to investigate everything in the future, especially the current battle situation. No matter what equipment is used, you must investigate it for me. As Nick Fury's voice fell, S.H.I.E.L.D. is like a gigantic machine, and it's running crazily with exaggerated efficiency. In a very short period of time, Nick Fury received a report from his agents. Director, the current situation is very unfavorable for Tony Stark's side. Tony Stark is fighting a man with a hammer, and he's at a disadvantage. And Su-Yi's female companion, Hela, doesn't seem to be an ordinary person. She is fighting a figure whose whole body is made of steel, and there is another figure beside her, constantly assisting. Looks like it's going downhill too. After getting the report from the agent, Nick Fury quickly asked, "What about Su-Yi? Have you noticed Su-Yi's figure?" Report to the Director General, "We haven't found Su-Yi." Hearing his subordinate's words, Nick Fury's heart sank completely. It is enough to see how dangerous the current situation is. In the Monaco Center Mall. The battle has entered a fierce stage. Bang! I saw Thor swinging the hammer, and before Tony Stark could react, he slammed it on Tony Stark's body. It hit the ground heavily. Can't get up again. At this moment, Hela felt unprecedented pressure. She hadn't recovered to her peak state, and now she fell into the situation of exhaustion of divine power again. She only saw Thor, Destroyer, and Loki standing in front of her, with killing intent radiating from her body. A heart in my heart slowly fell into the abyss. And at this moment, Loki controlled the Destroyer, gritted his teeth and directly blasted Thor next to him. Thor was unprepared, and was successfully attacked by Loki. The high-temperature rays devoured Thor's body mercilessly. A terrifying high-temperature beam washed over Thor's body. Facing the terrifying Destroyer, even Thor couldn't resist for a while. Looking at the scene in front of him, Loki finally couldn't bear it anymore. I just heard him laugh out loud. Ha 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 ha, everything is a foregone conclusion now, no one can stop me. I, Loki, will eventually become the king of Asgard. Hela looked at the scene in front of her without any change in her expression. Even though she no longer has the slightest divine power, she doesn't have the slightest timidity either. She just looked at Loki in front of her so coldly, her body exuded a breath of death. She said to Loki in front of her, "You are called Loki, right? If you are willing to surrender to me now, I can forgive your rude behavior before, and even after I fully recover and defeat Odin, I can seal you off. You are the general, let you lead our warriors of Asgard to conquer the 9 realms. What do you think?" Loki heard Hela's words, his face was full of excitement, and Loki slowly took it back. Returned to the way it was before. He just looked at Hela in front of him and said, "Are you negotiating terms with me? You don't even look at what's going on now. Your helper is already lying on the sidelines. And the divine power in your body should have been completely exhausted. Now, let me ask you what to fight with me. As long as I can kill you, I can become the king of Asgard. At that time, I will be the most honorable person in the entire 9 realms. Even if I am not the son of Odin, so what?" Hela looked at Loki in front of her with flat eyes. The expression has not changed in the slightest. Just like an ancient well, the waves are calm. With an extremely cold voice, she said to Loki in front of her, "If that's the case, then you can kill me." After speaking, Hela slowly closed her eyes. At this time, the central mall has already extended in all directions. In the raised mall, the surrounding walls have completely collapsed, and there is no trace of the previous prosperity. Tony Stark gritted his teeth when he heard Hela's words, and said to Jarvis, "Jarvis, can the iron suit be restarted?" Jarvis: "Sir, the power system of the suit has been destroyed, and the weapon system has been destroyed. Except for the body detection function, all basic functions can no longer function normally. Physical examination is underway. Sir, there is heavy bleeding in your body, and urgent treatment is required." Tony Stark cursed secretly, if the strength of this armor could be slightly higher. He won't be rubbed on the ground by Thor. In the final analysis, the new energy core is strong, but because we are in Monaco, we cannot make better armor. As long as he is given time, he will first create an anti-Thor armor and get back the face he lost. But now, it seems that everything is too late. A strong sense of dizziness keeps rising. Tony Stark could faint at any moment. Thinking of this, Tony Stark said to Jarvis, "Jarvis, send a message to Pepper Potts, and say that if you meet Suyi, say sorry to him for me, this time it was my negligence. Also, tell Pepper Potts that I love her." After speaking, Tony Stark slowly closed his eyes. He lost too much blood and fell into a deep coma. At this time, the excited expression on Loki's face can be said to be somewhat irrepressible. He couldn't wait, and wanted to take off Hela's head. He stretched out his slightly trembling hands because of excitement. Loki controlled the destroyer and walked slowly towards Hela. Every time the destroyer took a step, the golden light in his eyes became more condensed. The terrifying golden light, even if it wasn't emitted, made the surrounding air a bit illusory. This is definitely the strongest attack of the destroyer since the beginning. I only heard Loki shouting excitedly at this time, "The throne is mine." As Loki's words fell, the light in the destroyer's eyes suddenly surged out. The blazing high-temperature light beam shot towards Hela's body with an incomparable gaze. In the distance, Nick Fury from S.H.I.E.L.D. dropped his hands weakly. Looking at the screen that was passed on, he couldn't help saying sadly, "Everything is over." Fake. Nick Fury couldn't imagine what Suyi would be like after Hela died. According to Nick Fury's observations these days, Suyi is an extremely defensive person. As long as it is the person he recognizes, there is absolutely no one who can bully him. And it is such a person, if he becomes crazy, Nick Fury gets dizzy thinking about it. And just when Nick Fury was completely desperate, a subordinate suddenly said, the space in front of Hela was detected, and strong fluctuations appeared, as if something was about to come out. What? Hearing this sentence, Nick Fury suddenly walked to the side of the speaker, looking at the detection screen in front of him and the fluctuation of various data. I only saw the beam of the destroyer coming to Hela immediately. A passage with a height of one person appeared in front of Hela. Just as the passage appeared out of thin air, a hand stretched out. It seems that he is not afraid of the light beam in front of him. Chi chi chi. The blazing and terrifying high-temperature light beams of the destroyer landed on Suyi's palm, continuously burning Suyi's palm. All I saw was Suyi's palm, which was constantly healing from injury to healing, and so on. Until Suyi came out from the passage. Only then did he shake his hand violently. The powerful palm force seemed to directly crush the destroyer's beam. Like a chain reaction, it exploded directly on the destroyer. All I saw was the body of the destroyer, who was blown away at the moment of the explosion. An arc was drawn in the air, and it hit the ground heavily. A human-shaped pothole appeared on the ground. The sudden figure immediately attracted Loki's attention. Loki's pupils shrank suddenly. He had a bad premonition that spread in his heart. And at this moment, Thor, who was blasted away before, gritted his teeth and got up from the ground. After glaring at Loki angrily, Thor turned his gaze to Suyi in front of him. Thor could also feel tremendous pressure from Suyi. "Loki, I'll settle the matter with you later, let's settle this guy first." Loki couldn't wait for this. Without any hesitation, he immediately nodded to Thor. At the same time, he controlled the destroyer again and stood up from the hole. Facing the common siege of Thor, Destroyer, and Loki, Suyi yawned, turned to look at Hela behind him, and said to Hela, "It seems that I came at just the right time." Hela slowly opened her eyes, looking at Suyi in front of her. For some reason, Hela, who was originally extremely cold, now has tears in her eyes. Suyi's heart softened in an instant. Immediately, Hela was in his arms. Putting his hands behind Hela's beautiful back, he patted Hela's beautiful back lightly, and a voice rang in Hela's ear, okay, just leave the rest to me, and I will teach them a good lesson for you." Following Suyi's voice fell. Loki directly controlled the destroyer, shooting towards Suyi's back. But all of this seemed to have been noticed by Suyi long ago. Suyi hugged Hela directly, and took a step to the side. The light directly brushed against the corner of Suyi's clothes, and landed on a ruined wall in the distance. A lot of dust was raised. Loki's heart sank suddenly. He didn't expect that even if Suyi turned his back to them, he could easily dodge the attack of the destroyer. Thor didn't hesitate at all when he saw this. Swinging his own hammer, he rushed towards Suyi. Buzz. Under Thor's control, the hammer kept spinning, whistling in the air. It was as if the entire space had been disrupted by Thor's hammer. At this moment, CC arc attached itself to the hammer, charged towards Suyi with the power of thunder. A stern look flashed in Suyi's eyes. I saw Suyi's legs took a step back. Using this leg as a fulcrum, the waist drives the leg to rotate, and at the same time puts both hands on Hela's willow waist, which cannot be grasped, and sends it to the side. Bang! I saw Suyi kicking Thor's face easily. Afterwards, Suyi slowly printed it on Hela's lips. The movement just now was like a dance on the ruins. Elegant to the extreme, but also violent to the extreme. Thor's face was stuck to the soles of Suyi's feet just now. The powerful force even caused Thor's teeth to fall out of his mouth. It looks so ugly. Immediately afterwards, Thor's body fell to the ground, gliding for a full 100 meters, and finally stopped barely. Lip points. Hela's delicate and pretty face was very rosy. I can't tell at all, this is the appearance of the former goddess of death, Hela. She looks like a shy little girl. Hateful. Thor supported his body and slowly got up from the ground. At the same time, he looked at Loki next to him, and said to Loki, "Loki, this guy is very strong." Loki complained in his heart, "I'm not stupid, I've seen all the previous battles, okay." But when Loki's words came to his mouth, it became, "Yeah, this guy is really too strong. If you want to defeat him, maybe you can inject your own divine power into the destroyer." Destroyer, one of Asgard's most powerful weapons. It's not as vulnerable as in the movie. As Loki's words fell, Thor came directly to Loki's side without saying a word. Together with Loki, he injected his divine power into the destroyer. Watching their actions, Suyi joked to Hela, "Hela, are you saying that they are stupid to discuss countermeasures in front of the enemy?" If it wasn't for Suyi's own plan, he would have slapped each of them, killing them on the ground. Hearing Suyi's words, Hela laughed out loud. But then, Hela said to Suyi again, "Be careful, even if the power of the destroyer is in my heyday, I still have to stay away." And as Hela's voice fell, the divine power of the destroyer reached an unprecedented peak. The aura on the destroyer is constantly rising crazily. At this moment, Loki's eyes shone with a strange light. I don't know what was going on in my mind, I only saw that the divine power he sent to the destroyer had suddenly decreased a lot. Obviously he was preparing for the future. But even so, the powerful energy of the destroyer became incomparably solidified under the transmission of Thor and Loki. Suddenly, he glared at Suyi, who was not far ahead. Extremely hot beams of high temperature gushed out from the eyes of the destroyer. At an extremely fast speed, he rushed towards Suyi. Never thought. When Suyi faced this terrifying high temperature light beam, he slowly opened his hands and closed his eyes. The whole person seemed to have given up all defenses, allowing the high temperature beam to wash over his body. After seeing the scene in front of them, Thor and Loki were all stunned. What's happening here? If they can post memes, they will definitely send out black question marks. At the same time, Suyi started the live broadcast of the chat group. All of a sudden, members of the group poured in one after another. Even Yuki, Asuna and CC, who were in Sao, also entered the live broadcast room. Yuki, Asuna, what's the situation now? CC, Suyi, you didn't just get beaten up here right after you returned to your own world, did you? Whitebeard, Gu la 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 la, for men, fighting is romance. Estes, please, old man with a white beard, for me, fighting is also romance, okay. If you fight with someone you like, it is definitely the romance of romance. Unojawali, agreed. Edward Elric, why do I feel that the aura on Suyi's body is gradually dissipating? CC, maybe I'm going to die again soon. Mao Jawali. Estes, black question mark. JPG. Suyi, well, shouldn't you be paying attention to these two people in front of you now? One of them is Thor, the god of thunder, and the other is Loki, the god of fire and mischief, and also the god of lies. Asuna Yuki. Meow shocked. JPG. Edward Elric. If I remember correctly, Thor's hammer is worth 50,000 in the points mall. Estes. In other words, Suyi is equivalent to 50,000 points for free prostitution, which is too exaggerated. Unojawali. But it feels like your aura is getting weaker and weaker, are you really okay? Suyi. Ah, you said death, if you didn't say it, I would have forgotten it. Following Suyi in the chat group, after sending this sentence. Suyi slowly closed his eyes. He gathered almost all his energy, and restrained the self-recovery function in his body. Work hard to reduce your body function to the minimum. Finally, after Suyi made unprecedented efforts, he was finally killed by the destroyer, a high-temperature beam mixed with divine power. The whole body gradually disappeared, and even a speck of dust disappeared completely. Thor and Loki at the scene were even more astonished. Even Hela was slightly stunned. She didn't know what the hell Suyi was doing. But as the goddess of death, she is unprecedentedly sensitive to the breath of death. If it was before, she knew that Suyi would be resurrected after death. But this time, there wasn't even a trace of Suyi's body left. Thor and Loki are also very vigilant, watching everything around them. I was afraid that Suyi would sneak attack them from somewhere. However, as time goes by bit, it seems that Suyi's figure never appeared again. It looks like he's really dead, Thor said to Loki next to him. Loki observed Hela's expression. He could feel the deep shock hidden in Hela's expression. It seems that he is indeed dead. I really don't know how that guy's head grew. If you want to die, just say no. You still make us so troublesome. Then the task now is to completely kill this person in front of me, Thor said to Loki next to him. However, when he said these words, he was still wary of Loki next to him. Although he is arrogant, he is not stupid. In front of the throne, it seems that he still can't trust his younger brother too much. Even if the guy in front of him is not his own brother, but also is the son of Odin, Thor still recognized Loki. However, what Thor didn't know was that Loki himself didn't think so. When he knew his true identity from Hela, although his heart is very uncomfortable, he also has an unprecedented ecstasy, because this means that he can use the box of ice. That is the family treasure of the frost giants. Possesses terrifying frost power. Just when Loki was about to take out the box of ice and attack Thor, unexpectedly, a golden pattern suddenly appeared in front of them. This golden pattern spread continuously, as if printed in the space. In the end it turned into a sun. It exudes a dazzling light like the sun. This pattern continues to spread in the space. With the sun as the center, a figure was outlined at an extremely fast speed. The figure was gradually filled with light, and Suyi's figure was reflected in everyone's eyes. I saw that Suyi's whole body was covered with golden lines, which looked very dazzling, exuding majesty like a supreme being. He was floating in the air, his whole body was emitting light, and there were also sun-like lines hidden in his eyes. Like a real god. And this form was named by Suyi, Supreme Doomsday Awakening. At this moment, Loki and Thor stared at Suyi in front of them, their expressions full of disbelief. How is it possible? Didn't you die just now? Obviously there is not even a trace of residue left, why does it still appear? Suyi looked at the two people in front of him, and said calmly, yeah, he was dead just now, isn't he alive now, what's so surprising about that? Following Suyi's voice fell. Thor and Loki opened their mouths, not knowing how to refute for a while. The people in the group were also very surprised when they saw this scene in front of them, because this was the first time they saw Suyi in this form. Yuki Asuna. My god, this state is really handsome. CC. I feel a very long breath, and it also gives me a feeling called warmth. Whitebeard. It feels like Suyi is stronger in this form. Gudong. Loki swallowed subconsciously. Regarding the power of the destroyer, he, the controller, can be said to be the clearest. Even Odin didn't dare to bathe under the beam of that terrifying scorching heat. But the person in front of them was not only bathed in the light, but also stood in front of them with utmost ease. This has completely exceeded their imagination. Suyi's eyes fell on Thor and Loki in front of him. His expression was full of disdain. He floated in the air, looking down at the two people in front of him. I'll give you 3 seconds. If you can't kill me in 3 seconds, then you will be the ones who die. Loki is most sensitive to falsehoods in words. Thor, do it, he's serious. Loki didn't hesitate at the moment. He stretched out his hands suddenly, and the box of ice that was originally intended to be used against Thor appeared in Loki's hands at this moment. A cold breath emanated from the box of ice. Because of the frost giant's blood relationship, Loki was not cursed at all, but was able to exert unprecedented frost power. The icy air seems to freeze the space. As Loki slowly opened the box of ice, the cold air gushed out like a 10,000-year ice cellar. Space seems to be frozen in general. Estes, who was watching the live broadcast in the chat group, was even more shocked at this moment. This icy air is stronger than the air produced by my Taigu. Suyi. Maybe it's because the ice box is a product of mythology. After Suyi finished expressing his opinion in the chat group, he slowly stretched out his hand. The light emitted by the golden lines on his body is even more dazzling at this time. There is absolutely no way for the icy air to invade Suyi's body. Even if it is a penny, it is impossible. All the icy air was blocked by Suyi. Even with the light gradually dazzling, huge energy, under Suyi's control, instantly wrapped the box of ice, and then easily clenched his palm. Bang! A deafening sound resounded in everyone's ears. Immediately afterwards, there was a plop sound. All I saw was Loki falling to the ground far away in a state of embarrassment. The figure of the ice box has completely disappeared in Loki's hands. Not only Thor and Hela were stunned. Suyi's action gave those people in the group a deeper understanding of Suyi's power. Yuki Asuna. If I read correctly just now, Suyi said before that this box of ice is a product of myth. Yuki Asuna. May I ask if the quality of the products of the myth is not good, otherwise, why would the ice box explode when Suyi-kun grasped it? CC. Maybe, Suyi has power beyond mythology. CC. Whitebeard, I remember that your body has no hidden injuries. Whitebeard. Yes, why are you talking about this all of a sudden? CC. If I remember correctly, you once said before that as long as the hidden wounds on your body are gone, you plan to challenge the group leader Suyi. Whitebeard. Gu la 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 la, today's weather is really nice, my sons asked me to go to the banquet. Whitebeard. Slipped. JPG. When the chat group is joking with each other here. Suyi's eyes turned to Thor, who was beside him. Thor only felt that when Suyi's eyes fell on him, he felt an unspeakable scorching feeling. The strong desire to survive made Thor, the god of thunder, awaken the power of Thor in his body at this moment. At this moment, he is no longer the god of hammer, but the god of thunder with the power of thunder. I saw the electric arc on Thor's body constantly entangled on Thor's body. Let Thor's momentum continue to rise and become stronger. Thunder roared at this moment. Holding his hammer high, Thor rushed towards Suyi brazenly. The muscles on his body swelled to the extreme. It looks like a small hill. At this moment, Hela's eyes flashed with worry. As Thor, who inherited the power of Odin, the power of blood in his body should not be underestimated at all. Immediately, because Hela was worried about Suyi, she blurted out, "Be careful." However, Suyi stretched out his finger indifferently. The cloud calmly arrived under Thor's hammer. Bang! The raging hurricane centered on the two and spread out in all directions. Hela exhausted her remaining divine power to withstand the hurricane. And Tony Stark, who was lying down not far away, flew towards the distance along with the hurricane. The terrifying destructive power immediately enveloped thousands of feet in radius. Even the space around Suyi and Thor was distorted by this powerful force. The ground under their feet shook from side to side like a violent earthquake. With the splitting sound of kacha kacha, one after another bottomless canyon cracks burst open on the surface, like the mouths of countless monsters opening from the ground. The whole land fell apart and collapsed everywhere. Hela also didn't expect that the battle between Suyi and Thor would cause such a great power. Seeing that he was about to be swallowed by the crack, he suddenly felt a force and dragged himself up. Then slowly put her on the flat place. It wasn't until this time that Hela breathed a sigh of relief. Her eyes looked towards the center of the battle in the distance. At this moment, a huge pothole appeared under their feet. But Suyi radiated light, still like a god, looking down on everything below. Thor's hand is broken. After all, Thor's hammer could not escape the fate of being crushed, and turned into countless fragments, scattered around Thor. Yes, Loki watched Thor mortally wounded. And his whole cards have been completely used up. This extremely aggrieved feeling made him feel only deep despair. Destroyer, get on me. Kill the guy in front of you. Loki gritted his teeth and looked at Suyi in front of him, and said, although the destroyer may not be able to defeat you, but the material it is made of Asgard Ulu metal, you will never. Loki was only halfway through his words. Su Yi's figure had already disappeared in place. When he appeared again, the figure had already arrived in front of the destroyer. All I saw was Su Yi's thumb and middle finger clasped together. Then the middle finger snapped out. Bang! The destroyer's head was instantly dented. Terrifying force erupted on the forehead of the destroyer. So much so that the destroyer turned into an afterimage and smashed heavily on the ground 10,000 meters away. It wasn't until this time that Su Yi realized what Loki had just said. He turned his head, looked at Loki next to him, and said lightly to Loki, "What did you just say?" Hearing Su Yi's words, the corners of Loki's mouth twitched, and the expression on his face was completely frozen. Shield. Nick Fury slumped in his chair. He stared dumbfounded at the scene in front of him. Su Yina was floating in the air like a god. Even across the screen, Nick Fury can easily feel the substantive sense of coercion. Is this Su Yi's true strength? Nick Fury murmured. He really doesn't know now what is the best way to do when facing Su Yi. He only felt a deep sense of powerlessness rising in his body. On the contrary, it was Alexander Pierce next to him. He looked at the powerful power displayed by Su Yi on the screen. His eyes were filled with extremely fiery gaze. This kind of power, if you can master it. Isn't he the god of the world? Greedy desires turned into demons, gradually devouring Alexander Pierce's sanity. Although he was very greedy for Su Yi's power. But he still knew that with his current strength alone, it would be very difficult to obtain Su Yi's blood. It can even be said to be as difficult as climbing the sky. However, this doesn't mean that you can't take the edge with your sword. The corners of Alexander Pierce's mouth rose slightly, and he only felt that he was full of bad water and could finally come in handy. At this time, among the ruins, Su Yi looked at Loki and Thor in front of him, and said slowly, "Now it's your turn, do you have anything else to say before you die? I would like to surrender at your feet. You are the most powerful person I have ever seen. Surrendering at your feet is the most correct choice in my life. Please accept my surrender." Without saying a word, Luoji quickly knelt down in front of Su Yi with a slap. It can be said that there is no backbone at all. Su Yi just looked at Loki indifferently. The tone was slightly upbeat. "Really? Are you serious?" A look of joy flashed in Loki's eyes. Hastily nodded and said, "Of course, for the great." Before Luoji finished speaking, Su Yi's eyes were condensed with high-temperature rays. This high-temperature ray is even hotter than the destroyer. This is the ability that Su Yi evolved from the previous death. No, to be precise, it was an upgrade of the previous heat ray. The power has been increased by at least 10 times. The extremely terrifying gaze turned into a high-temperature beam and landed on Loki's body at an extremely fast speed. Real. Kill with your eyes. Bang. As Su Yi's gaze fell, he only saw that there was another pothole added to Luoji's position just now. At this time, there are countless potholes in the central mall, large and small. Into the eyes, it is full of ruins. And the smoke from the explosion dissipated. Su only saw one of Loki's arms, which fell into the pothole. There was no trace of the corpse at all. In the chat group, everyone also noticed this. Yuki Asuna. Should I be said to be the god of mischief and the god of lies? He really has all the skills to survive. If there is no accident, he should have survived with a broken arm. CC. Being able to escape from Su Yi's hands, I think he will be able to boast for a lifetime. Estes. To be able to escape in front of Su Yi, this kind of strength is already very powerful. Ujihualai. Yeah, the more I get to know Su Yi better, the more I feel that Su Yi's power is really too powerful. Ujiwali. I even feel now that even our captain is not Su Yi's opponent at all. Hinata. Brother Su Yi is the strongest. Not to mention the people in the group. Su Yi also noticed that Loki had escaped. Moreover, the aura on his body became increasingly dimmer, and it was quite difficult to chase him down. Therefore, Su Yi decided not to chase after him. He wants to bury this place directly on a large scale. Whether they are dead or alive depends on their own creation. As soon as Su thought of this, his figure flashed, and he came to the sky above the ruins in an instant. View from above. Most of the entire city has been destroyed. Other personnel have also been evacuated to other places. It can be said that this place has become a ghost city. Seeing this, Su Yi raised his right hand slowly. From Suyi's fingers, golden lines began to spread in the air. In the blink of an eye, the golden lines outlined a small sun in the sky. A small sun hovers above the ruins. Just because of this, an unprecedented fire broke out in the city because of the high temperature. Loki obviously also noticed the scene in front of him. He can be said to be extremely embarrassed at the moment. Not to mention his clothes, but his seriously injured body and his missing arm made Loki feel unprecedented pain. I saw Loki running forward continuously. There is only one thought in his mind now, and that is to escape from this city. As for other messy things, he has completely given up on it. If God gave him another chance, he would never come to the atrium. This is a place that is countless times more terrifying than Asgard. And just when Luoji thought of this, Suyi, who was in the air, waved his arm downward. I only saw the slowly rising sun slowly falling from the sky. At the same time, Suyi activated his own magnetic field, locking the figures of Hela, Destroyer, and Tony Stark. Pulling it by his side, he leisurely flew towards the distance. As for Suyi's back, at this moment, there was an extremely dazzling light. The light illuminated the sky into a blazing white color. In comparison, other places are like falling into a dark night. It seems that in the whole world, only the scorching sun is shining on the world. As the scorching sun gradually dissipated, the whole city turned into a huge pothole. Potholes can even be said to be extremely smooth. In the pothole, everything is wiped out. Some may just be dust floating in the air. Facing his masterpiece, Su didn't care at all. As for the life and death of Thor and Loki, Suyi didn't care about it. After all, in front of Suyi, he was nothing but an ant. As the lines on Suyi's body gradually faded away, the huge coercion also dissipated a little from Suyi's body. Ha! Suyi yawned. It has to be said that once the state of awakening eye is lifted, the strong sleepiness will come like a tide. This is not a physical exhaustion, but purely a little tired mentally. Hela, we are going back to Queen's directly. After speaking, Suyi's figure disappeared in place. In the next second, Suyi and the others came to Queen's district. Without any hesitation, Suyi directly kicked Tony Stark to shield. Then he hugged Hela, returned to the villa, and fell into a dream. At this time, Pepper also learned from S.H.I.E.L.D. that Tony Stark was safe, so he hurried from the refuge area to the S.H.I.E.L.D. by plane. In the blink of an eye, 3 days have passed. In the blink of an eye, 3 days have passed. During these 3 days, Suyi and Hela could say that apart from sleeping, they would go to bed after eating. It can be said that the word lazy has been brought to the extreme. Who would have thought that a guy who loves to sleep so much has the power to easily destroy the world? Compared to the tranquility of Suyi and Hela, it can be said that S.H.I.E.L.D. is busy here. They have to deal with all kinds of crap. For example, how the city was destroyed and what the situation was. What is the sun, or who did these things? These things need Nick Fury to organize them into reports, and then hand them over to the people who need them. It can be said that the workload in these 3 days is already much higher than the sum of the work he has done in this year. Even Nick Fury, the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., felt that his body couldn't hold on anymore. Suyi. It's all this Suyi. We must have someone who can counter Suyi. As Nick Fury's words fell, he saw his hands slamming heavily on the table. It's just that the look on his face was not anger, but despair and decadence that had never appeared before. Don't look at Nick Fury's nice words, but he knows very well that they have no way to compete against Suyi with the current ones alone. And this also led to them not only being unable to stop Suyi from doing what he wanted to do, but sometimes even needing to help. This is what Nick Fury feels most desperate about. And at this time, Pierce came to Nick Fury and said to Nick Fury, sometimes we don't need to start with ourselves. Pierce's words made Nick Fury stunned for a moment. He turned around, looked at Pierce next to him and said, "What do you mean by this sentence? Do you want me to start with the people around Suyi?" Pierce didn't reply, just quietly looked at Nick Fury in front of him. It's just that Pierce's move has already told Nick Fury what he thinks in his heart. Nick Fury looked at Pierce in front of him and said, "Pierce, are you crazy? You must know that in the face of absolute strength, any trick is absolutely impossible to succeed. I also have a certain understanding of Suyi's strength. No, you don't know Suyi's horror at all. His ability is not what you saw before. I think he has other abilities. We don't understand Suyi at all. When Pierce heard Nick Fury's words, he only felt that his face became a little ugly. Well, maybe, Pierce murmured in a low voice, but the expression on his face didn't look like he was willing no matter how he looked. Nick Fury may have sensed Pierce's thoughts. He said to Pierce again, Pierce, I advise you not to think about something. If Suyi is really angered, S.H.I.E.L.D. will disappear in the long river of history. Pierce, the old fox, laughed immediately after hearing what Nick Fury said. Don't worry, I'm just thinking about things like this. After speaking, Pierce turned and left, no longer talking to Nick Fury. At the same time, Pierce thought in his heart, whether S.H.I.E.L.D. will disappear in history is none of his business. Anyway, nowadays, Hydra is parasitic in S.H.I.E.L.D. and has controlled a lot of resources. Even without S.H.I.E.L.D., they can, self-reliant. Thinking of this, Pierce shouted in his heart, Long live Hydra. Pierce is the leader of Hydra within S.H.I.E.L.D. With this level of identity alone, it is impossible for him to stand in Nick Fury's camp. Thinking of this, Pierce prepared to attack the woman beside Suyi. The first to bear the brunt is Hannah Marks. This woman who crazily pursues Suyi. But he got the news, knowing that during this period of time, she often went to Suyi's villa. In other words, he can completely attack Hannah. And he didn't ask much, just let Hannah collect Suyi's hair, sebum, etc. It would be even better if it was DNA. Pierce just felt more and more excited. If they can really master that kind of thing, then doesn't the whole world belong to their Hydra? At that time, they will be able to mass-produce someone as strong as Suyi. Then brainwash them from childhood. This is what Hydra is best at. After he got the things, he left directly with the Hydra members. At that time, only Nick Fury will be left behind in S.H.I.E.L.D. This is simply a plan to kill two birds with one stone. As for failure, in Pierce's view, it is absolutely impossible to fail. Because as long as you are human, you will have weaknesses. And family affection is one of the weaknesses. The only limitation is to guard against Nick Fury and not let Nick Fury be aware of his actions. Otherwise, he will be empty when the time comes to fetch water from the bamboo basket. At the same time, Suyi slowly opened his eyes. Looking at the sunlight outside the window, he glanced at the time on his phone. Unexpectedly, it was afternoon in the blink of an eye. Sure enough, the best way to let time pass is to sleep. Suyi stretched, habitually stamped on Hella's lips next to him, and then got off the bed. Taking out his phone, Suyi called Tony Stark. Tony, how is your body recovering? Stark Industries. Tony Stark glanced at the steel suit next to him, and said, It's not bad, it's basically free to move. Then do you remember the one request you still owe me? Of course I remember. Tell me, what do you want me to do? The corner of Suyi's mouth raised slightly. It's very simple, I'll give you something, I'll customize a steel suit, isn't it very simple? Tony Stark breathed a sigh of relief when he heard that. If it was just to customize a set of steel suits, then it would be a trivial matter. Anyway, every time he made a set of steel suits, he had to send one to Suyi. These days it's just customization. Thinking of this, Tony Stark said to Suyi, if it's a customized steel suit, then there's no problem at all. I'll wait for you at Stark Industries. When you come to Stark Industries, just tell my secretary. At this time, Suyi had already arrived in his underground storage room. He looked at the destroyer and the space gem lying here, with the corners of his mouth raised slightly, only to hear him say to Tony Stark, okay, I'll be right there. Following Suyi's words, he directly picked up the destroyer, and then slammed it on the space gem. In an instant, Suyi's figure disappeared into the underground storage room. From the underground storage room. Stark Industries. Tony Stark put down the phone, picked up the coffee next to him and took a sip. The moment he put the glass down, Tony Stark suddenly saw Suyi standing in front of him. Puff. For a while, Tony Stark couldn't control it, and sprayed himself all over. Immediately afterwards, Tony Stark said subconsciously, why did you come so fast? Only Suyi's voice was heard, and at this moment he teased, tisk tisk tisk, why are you so excited to see me? Tony Stark wiped his mouth casually. He looked at Suyi in front of him, and said to Suyi, when did you come here? When else could it be? Of course it was just now. To be more precise, it would be when I hung up the phone. Following Su Yi's words, he directly threw the destroyer aside. Then he said to Tony Stark, "Here, what you have to do is to combine this destroyer with the Rubik's Cube, is there no problem?" Tony Stark knows a little bit about the Rubik's Cube. It's just that Tony Stark doesn't know how to start with this destroyer. He stood up from his seat. He came to the side of the destroyer and looked up and down the material of the destroyer. "Jarvis, scan this guy." As Tony Stark's voice fell, the artificial intelligence Jarvis controlled a scanner, came to the side of the destroyer, emitted a red ray, and slowly scanned the materials on the destroyer. After a long time, Jarvis said to Tony Stark, "Sir, this is a material from other planets, and its toughness is far beyond what we can handle." Tony Stark shrugged his shoulders at this time, and said to Su Yi, "Su Yi, as you can see, it's not that I don't want to help you, we have no way to deal with this guy unless you are willing to help me." Having said that, Tony Stark looked at the sunken place on the destroyer's face. "I just felt chills in my heart. He has seen this guy before, let's not talk about his terrifying power." Even if his palm cannon landed on the destroyer, there was no spark at all, and it could be seen how exaggerated the materials used to build this guy were. At this time, Su Yi had already visited Tony Stark's office on his own. I just heard him say softly, "No, I just want to build a toy for fun. After all, mechs are the romance of men, aren't they? If it takes me a lot of time to build this toy, then for me it's nothing less than an ordeal." Hearing that Su Yi just wanted to make a toy, Tony Stark only felt that he was very big-headed. What kind of toy should be made with Destroyer and Cosmic Rubik's Cube? After a pause, Su Yi said again, "If I bring the adamantium alloy to you, can you transform the Destroyer?" Edmund alloy was originally a metal synthesized from vibrating gold, iron and catalysts. This metal can be said to be extremely hard, slightly stronger than Genjin. It's just that there are very few adamantium alloys today. As for the number of true adamantium alloys that can reach the level of indestructibility, in Su Yi's mind, there is only one guy who has it, and that is Wolverine in X Academy. Tony Stark has already heard about Edmund metal. I only saw Tony Stark nodded slightly at this time. "If I really have adamantium, I would like to try it, or if you prepare a lot of vibrating gold for me, I can also get you a metal similar to adamantium." Having said that, Tony Stark puffed up his chest. He is a true scientific genius. He believed that as long as he gave himself enough vibrating gold metal, he would definitely be able to develop a metal no less than adamantium alloy. It might even be stronger than Edmund alloy. Su Yi just smiled at this, and said, "It's okay, but have you prepared for the price of using those vibrating gold?" Tony Stark froze for a moment, and asked subconsciously, "The price? What do you mean?" Su Yi sat in emptiness, and said, "For example, a large number of lives." Tony Stark's body trembled. He has no idea why it takes a lot of life to use Genjin. But he fully knew that Su Yi in front of him didn't care about this at all. As long as he is willing to nod, then he can really bring Genjin. But if he really nodded, he wouldn't be Tony Stark. Thinking of this, Tony Stark shook his head quickly. No, I can't bear the price you said." Seeing Tony Stark's nervous appearance, Su Yi laughed out loud. "What are you doing so nervous?" "I'm just joking. If I really want to find Genjin, I don't know where to find it." "Okay, wait here for a while, I'm going to meet an old friend, and I'm going to borrow adamantium from him." Following Su Yi's words, he suddenly pressed the Cosmic Rubik's Cube in his hand. A halo of azure blue vibrated out. With Su Yi's figure, he disappeared into Tony Stark's studio. In the next second, Su Yi's figure appeared in front of the gate of X Academy. It's just that Su Yi didn't expect the moment when his figure appeared in front of the X Academy. Screaming sirens resounded throughout the academy. When the members of the academy heard the siren, their expressions all changed. Seeing this, the Phoenix girl hurriedly said to her companion next to her, "That guy is here. Everyone is on combat readiness. Take the children to the refuge." I said, "You don't have to be so afraid of me." Su Yi's figure appeared next to Phoenix Girl, and said to Phoenix Girl and the people beside her. Everyone just felt as if they had fallen into an ice cellar. "You won't kick the door away again, will you?" The Phoenix Girl questioned Su Yi, while looking at Suyi in front of her with very wary eyes. The scene when Suyi came here for the first time 3 years ago came to mind. At that time, Suyi was relatively immature, and he only needed to send 3 mutants to defeat Suyi. But what shocked them was that every time Suyi was killed, he would become stronger. A whole month, Suyi came to X Academy to check in every day, until he was able to easily torture them with blood. I seldom come to X Academy. Although I have been here a few times since then, it was a long time ago. In order to prevent Suyi from appearing suddenly, they specially collected Suyi's body shape and face, just to be able to immediately enter a state of combat readiness the moment Suyi appeared. In this way, more than a year and a half have passed. I thought Suyi wouldn't come here again, but I didn't expect it to be on the day of Professor X's birthday. Suyi is here again. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.